Hogwarts. I'm more than a Dark Lord. Chapter 41. The noisy hallway fell silent in the next moment. Then came louder whispers, even the portraits that had already gone to sleep sat up, most of them gathered into one painting, glancing at the few people standing in the hallway. Ginny peered out from behind the armor, her gaze toward Harry with an unusual glint. Harry felt somewhat powerless. He sensed that the moment he blurted out, countless eyes were focused on his face. This weird sensation made his cheeks visibly blush. He opened his mouth but didn't know what to say. Good evening, Mr. Richard. Finally, it was Hermione, who had already witnessed such a scene once and wasn't the subject involved, who reacted first. Meow. The gray cat emerged from William's feet. Kabuto was laying listlessly on its back. Its belly appeared much emptier than half an hour ago. Good evening. So, what are you doing here in the middle of the night? William nodded, once again ignoring the fact that he was called Mom by the Savior. He really didn't want to delve into this matter, although he had no clue why Harry would address him as Mom the moment they met, but being a new mother, not. Ahem, but when he thought of the boy's eye contact just now, goosebumps started crawling up his arms. Aren't you here in the middle of the night too? Ginny retorted without being weak, but the girl who had just spoken seemed to realize something, subconsciously glancing at the still dazed Harry, and then silently retreated. At the same time, her gaze toward William carried a hint of suspicion. Obviously, the doubts pressed deeply by various unexpected incidents in her mind resurfaced at this moment. We were just. Harry finally recovered from his frozen state, then stumbled again. His brain started to run rapidly, seemingly trying to find a good excuse for this nighttime outing. We were just out to unwind. Good, a clumsy excuse. Is it because of the attack? William's eyes moved slightly, probing with his question. Actually, it's. How did you know? Hermione slapped her forehead again, looking at Harry, who suddenly interrupted once again. She really felt like she wanted to hit someone now. After speaking, Harry also realized the problem in his words, but it was too late to mend fences now. He could only stare at William, hoping his spirit wouldn't seem too defeated. Nonsense, aren't you guys the main character group configuration? William smirked, naturally, having heard the rumors spreading wildly since this afternoon. Even heard 4 or 5 different versions, including a Harry Potter love-hate version, a Harry Potter jaded version, and even a Harry Potter possessed by the Dark Lord version. He couldn't help but admire the imagination of those little wizards, even starting to suspect if there was a dedicated organization behind the scenes crafting different story versions. I heard they say this attack is related to you. William reflected on his wording, not wanting to provoke the youngsters who had just entered puberty. Of course not. Good, the threshold for a teenage boy is low. You should know better than we do who did this. Harry's response was muffled by Ginny's retort. Noticing everyone's eyes, especially Harry's, turning towards her, Ginny retreated again, suddenly regretting her abrupt and straightforward words. Indeed blunt, William instantly understood. The little girl suspected him. Seems to have some logic. He had once assured them that the attack was strongly related to the soul within the diary. And now the diary was in his possession. Tisk, from this perspective, his suspicion was indeed considerable. But he wasn't sure why the attacks were still happening. After all, he had already confirmed that the diary was related to the attacks in the castle. Ron Weasley should have been manipulated by the soul in the diary. His original target likely was only Filch, who had confined him for 2 weeks despite only starting school a month. Something must have gone wrong afterwards. So when hearing another attack, it was impossible not to be surprised. However, when he asked Dobby about it, the puzzled expression wasn't pretended. Thus, he planned to change his approach, to accidentally lose the diary soon, and then let Cedric accidentally find it. This would allow Cedric to communicate with the diary. If the diary fell for it, then matters would be much simpler. To be honest, if he wasn't curious about what the secret chamber really was, he would just burn the diary with fiendfire. But before he could think about how to bring this up to Cedric, Mrs. Loris found him carrying Kabuto. It's not me. William shook his head. Oh, all right. Ginny nodded gloomily. Hermione and Harry's actions were very synchronized. They looked at Ginny in confusion, then turned to William, with an obvious meaning in their gaze. What kind of riddle are these two playing? Soon, a suspicion appeared in Hermione's mind. Before every attack, we perceive a precursor. She glanced at Harry, whose eyes were still somewhat blank, sighed and continued. What precursor? William raised an eyebrow. So does the main character group have special abilities? A voice, a very evil voice, constantly chanting about tearing and killing something, then the attack happens. At this moment Harry finally reacted. Although he wasn't sure why Hermione said he could also hear it, he didn't refute, directly explained. So, tonight. Yes, we heard that voice. Harry nodded. Tear, kill, but in the end, it's just petrification. William frowned, seemingly pondering something, but before he could clarify, the change at his feet caught his attention. Unknowingly, a stream of water had reached his feet. Mrs. Loris also carried Kabuta and perched on his shoulder, trembling as they softly meowed in his ear. Is this Moaning Myrtle's doing? Hermione blinked oddly, but she rarely does this, even angry only floods that restroom. Let's go check it out. Calming the two unsettled little guys on his shoulder, William led the way towards where the water was coming from. Soon, they arrived at a hallway flooded like a river. That half-abandoned restroom's door was open. William almost immediately spotted the collapsed shadow on the ground. Who is the professor on duty tonight? Snape. I'll go get him. Never mind. Who will go and fetch him here? Snape stared suspiciously at the bizarre group in front of him. From left to right, there was the new Weasley student, Granger, who liked to raise her hand and disrupt potions class, the son of his enemy, a new enemy, and the cat kept by Hogwarts, caretaker. Was there a rat perched on the cat's head? Weird. Very damn weird. In Snape's eyes, besides Harry Potter and his gang, there was only that Weasley. Although he was a little wizard, at least he was a Gryffindor, so why was this smooth-talking William Richard here? 5 minutes ago, he was still patrolling the 4th floor of the castle, as Peeves had been causing some trouble lately, and Dumbledore assigned 2 professors each night to patrol the upper and lower halves of the castle. Of course, the more important reason was to prevent little wizards from being attacked during night patrols. But if this entire row in front of him were to be attacked, Hogwarts air would be fresher for a whole semester. Snape scanned the group with a dark expression, his mind imagining without any sense of professionalism. The attack list could also include those other 2 Weasleys, the 5th-year Marcus, and Gryffindor's Longbottom. Snap. Just as Snape was endlessly lost in thought, William, noticing the man had spaced out, snapped his fingers in front of Snape's face. What the hell are you looking at? The Chinese words were pronounced perfectly, but unfortunately, no one in this room full of foreigners understood the deeper meaning. Even the cat and the rat were foreign. Startled out of his fantasy, Snape instinctively furrowed his brow and reasserted his professorial authority. What did you just say? Having not understood William's words, Snape coughed. I said, Professor, William said, pointing to the washroom behind Snape, are you just going to let her sleep there? She's just a ghost. Snape looked back at the dark washroom. The toilet, which had been spurting water, was silent now. A gray-white phantom lay still on the floor, but there was still a small gap before she fully touched the intricately patterned tiles. It was the weeping moaning Myrtle, and in just 10 minutes, she seemed to have completely lost her spirit. Oh, right, ghosts didn't have spirits to begin with. Can ghosts die too? Ginny peeked out from behind Hermione, asking timidly. William gave her a puzzled glance, knowing only that the girl was usually shy around Harry, but, wasn't this like a whole different personality? No, ghosts can't die again. William shook his head, unless they don't want to continue like this or have fulfilled their wishes. I've already informed the headmaster, now perhaps we should discuss some other issues. Snape interrupted William's explanation loudly, turning his head, his protuberant black eyes glaring viciously at Harry. For example, why are you out of your dormitory and common room during curfew? And why is it that we always find you at the scene of the crime, Potter? Harry's breathing became heavy. He had known this moment was coming. When William sent Hermione to get a teacher, he felt an ominous premonition. Upon hearing that Snape was the professor on duty that night, the feeling intensified, and when he saw the old bat floating over with his robes billowing at the end of the corridor, the dreadful premonition peaked. Now, what was inevitable had come. Harry could feel Snape's eyes boring into him, teeming with sinister thoughts, as if any slip in his explanation would earn him a mad dog's bite. He knew all too well that Snape had been wanting him expelled from Hogwarts and sent back to the Dursleys for ages. Hermione tried to interject. Miss Granger, I'm talking to Mr. Potter right now, so 10 points from Gryffindor. Snape's voice was icily cold. Hermione's face froze. She could almost hear the sound of gems vanishing from the Gryffindor hourglass. No, that was clearly the sound of her heart breaking. I dragged them on a night stroll, so punish me if you must. Seeing Hermione's almost heartbroken expression, and unable to come up with a plan, Harry took a deep breath under Snape's pressure and stepped forward to answer loudly. Reason? Snape asked unhurriedly, nodding. The reason is, because I was hungry. Harry's lips started to tremble. He wasn't even sure what he was saying. Not hungry on Halloween, but hungry tonight. Snape sneered. Is that not okay? Harry weakly attempted to explain. So you're saying you not only took 2 Gryffindor girls but even went to Hufflepuff House, dragging Mr. Richard out of his dorm, asking them to join you for a midnight snack. Harry suddenly realized what he had said. Yes, Harry is exceptionally gifted, with arms so long they reached from the entrance of our common room to my dormitory. William nodded seriously under Snape's gaze. PFF'd. Ginny couldn't hold back her laughter any longer. Another 10 points from Gryffindor. Snape fumed, his eyes narrowing, leaning into William's face, aiming his anger, and 50 from Hufflepuff. Scourgify. Scorify. You have bad breath, Professor. William said expressionlessly as he watched pink bubbles foam from Snape's mouth. Staring at the rising pink bubbles, Snape was momentarily stunned, before his eyes visibly reddened, his sallow cheeks turning pale. From under his robe emerged his right hand, and the tip of his magic wand pointed straight at William's chin. How dare you? He roared hoarsely. Harry and the others had never seen Snape so enraged. They watched the scene in astonishment, unable to comprehend the sudden change. Sectum Sempra. Sectum Sempra. Protega. Protega. Expelliarmus. Expelliarmus. In the next moment, a purple light flashed over William, while a red light burst from the other end of the corridor, slicing through the air and hitting the enraged Snape, disarming him as his wand flew from his hand and landed in a wrinkled hand. Severus, Dumbledore emerged from the shadows, his brow furrowing. You should not cast spells on students. Dumbledore's face was grim, his usually kind blue eyes smoldering with suppressed anger. No one present had ever seen the old man in such a state. Even Snape, who was currently in a rage and had begun to lose rationality, stopped casting spells on William. Losing his wand affected him, but not too much. Dumbledore took a deep breath, seemingly calming the fury within him. Minerva, I think it's time for the Gryffindor students to be in their dormitory. The old man's voice was slightly stiff as Professor McGonagall, wearing her light green checkered morning gown, stepped out from behind him. McGonagall's face was taut. She didn't even look at the frozen Snape, but walked over to the 3 Gryffindor students. You 3, come with me. She said, turning towards Gryffindor Tower. But Professor. Harry looked up worriedly at the only non-Gryffindor student present. He thought William was standing up for him this time. If it weren't for his awful explanation, Snape might not have had a reason to give them a hard time. Potter, come with me, Professor McGonagall emphasized again, much louder than before. William didn't. Potter. Let's go. Hermione tugged on Harry's arm but didn't budge him. The boy still stubbornly stood his ground. It wasn't until William shook his head at him that the boy finally reluctantly turned and followed Professor McGonagall. As they rounded the corridor, Harry instinctively looked back. In the dim corridor, Snape's figure, leaning against the brick wall, seemed more hunched than before. He was still staring in William's direction, but his vacant eyes revealed his current state. Flecks of pink soap bubbles persistently trickled from the man's mouth, making him seem somewhat ridiculous and pitiful. Severus, regardless, you shouldn't be casting spells at students in Hogwarts Castle. It wasn't until Professor McGonagall had completely disappeared with the group that Dumbledore finally spoke, breaking the silence between the 3 of them. Snape didn't defend himself, silently taking back the wand the old man handed him, then turned and left. Half an hour later, I'll see you in your office. Severus. Understood. The man's silhouette disappeared at the end of the corridor. Quite the impressive iron armor spell. Dumbledore turned his gaze from Snape and looked at William. Thank you, Professor McGonagall taught me well. William nodded. Although Dumbledore acted quickly just now, Snape's spell had successfully hit his iron armor spell, which had a noticeable impact, but it was far from tearing it apart. Fortunately, Dumbledore acted quickly, otherwise, the next second, it would have been time for someone else to cast the iron armor spell. After all, William always believed in one truth: offense is the best defense. Although it wasn't convenient to use those handy little mysterious spells in the castle, he was, after all, the 19th century savior of the wizarding world, the terminator of the Goblin Rebellion, the guardian of ancient magic, the Hogwarts model student of the year 1889. How could he have just that level of means? Moreover, just one Snape couldn't possibly defeat so many. Perhaps you'd like to help me escort Miss Warren to the hospital wing. Although it was phrased as a question, the old man spoke with the certainty of a statement. Someone finally remembered Moaning Myrtle. William didn't refuse, waving his wand gently to lift the petrified ghost from the ground, following behind the two of them. The headmaster led the way. William didn't know the way, and the two walked from one end of the castle's corridors to the other. After turning 3 corners, Dumbledore finally spoke again. Professor Snape's actions tonight were inappropriate, and I'll have him apologize to you. You might as well just kill him. Although he understood Dumbledore's intent to downplay the incident, William couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He hadn't intended to directly provoke Snape, but the other's way of treating students reminded him of a certain headmaster, making him instinctively uncomfortable. But observing Snape's state when he left, William had a feeling he'd perhaps triggered some deep memory in him. However, for tonight's incident, even if William initiated things, Snape was ultimately in the wrong. After all, a Hogwarts professor, an adult wizard, casting an aggressive curse on a fifth-year freshman. In these peaceful times, that's headline news for the Prophet Daily. Especially given Snape's special status, being a former Death Eater personally vouched for by Dumbledore. Any issue would be the best evidence for Dumbledore's enemies to use against him as senile. Once William declared this publicly, Snape could very likely be directly expelled from Hogwarts. But for now, William wasn't thinking that far ahead, nor was he considering chasing Snape away, because while his teaching ethics were nearly zero, his expertise in magic potions was notable. However, in contrast, he thought, let's forget the apology. After all, I was at fault initially tonight. William lowered his stance a bit, though he came from a century ago and when he graduated, Dumbledore had just enrolled. But even having lived 3.5 years in this magical world and having combined his experience from a past life of just over 20 years, he was still faced with this elder who had lived over 100 years. The differences in life and experience made William choose to speak less to err less. And just as he expected, the elderly liked to see their juniors showing humility. William's answer made the old man satisfied as his eyes squinted slightly. But I wanted to say, Headmaster. William shifted the topic towards a certain inept individual. Is there really a necessity for Hogwarts to continue the defense against the dark arts class? Defense against the dark arts class is quite important for the students. I also once held a position as the defense against the dark arts professor for a time. Dumbledore didn't quite catch William's drift at once, pushing open the door to the hospital wing as he spoke earnestly. Important. Important enough to hire an idiot as a professor. William placed the petrified Moaning Myrtle on the bed next to Colin Creevey and, not very politely, said, that idiot, that charlatan, he's turned the defense against the dark arts class into a theater club. Are we supposed to use acting techniques to deal with dark wizards in the future? Actually, Professor Lockhart does have some highlights. Such as his teeth, they're quite bright. If you really can't find anything to praise, it's actually okay not to. Watching Dumbledore, who hesitated for a long time and finally said, no harm, with a joking tone, William sighed. Clearly, the old man standing in front of him wasn't really going senile. Could it truly be as Hagrid said, that the position had become so undesirable that no one wanted it anymore? So, could he graduate early? Because every time he wanted to borrow something interesting from the Forbidden Book area, he had to specifically ask Professor Sprout for a note, which was really troublesome. Although he always managed to make the kind old lady happy, like a family member, every time he borrowed a book, it inevitably led to a round of questions. The disillusionment charm was also an option, but it ultimately couldn't be used long-term. Madame Pance's nose was even keener than Fang's. He didn't have a good buddy named Sebastian Seru to help cover for him now. Coincidentally, He had prepared his lessons 100 years ago, even had the teaching plans piled up in a corner of the room of requirement, covered in dust but just right for these little wizards spoiled by carefree education to experience the brutal competition of tackling a sea of problems. What OWL? Ordinary wizarding levels. What NEWT? Nastily exhausting wizarding tests. It's like 1,000 troops and horses crossing a single log bridge. Want to be an Auror? Want to work at St. Mungo's? Want to sit in the Ministry of Magic and have tea? Then you better learn to defend against the dark arts properly. If there hadn't been a little mishap with the time turner, even you, Dumbledore, would have to start taking papers from a young age. Ha 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 ha, cough cough. While William was dreaming, Dumbledore's voice rang out again. So, William, why are you wandering around at night tonight? At this moment, the two of them were standing in the corner of the hospital wing, and Madame Pomfrey, who was woken up hurriedly after being called by Dumbledore, was checking on Moaning Myrtle's condition. He didn't know why a head nurse even had to take care of a petrified ghost. Hearing Dumbledore's question, William couldn't help but cough twice. Nonsense, who wouldn't be night wandering at midnight? You think I've lived in that dorm room? But on the surface, William still pointed at the gray shadow crouching at the foot of the hospital bed. Mrs. Loris, who had fallen into a sleep with her owner, was looking at herself, no longer trying desperately to scratch at the other, but sitting quietly and letting the moonlight quietly crawl in through the window. Mrs. Loris discovered them, and she thought those little wizards were in danger, so she came to find me. William said, and of course, that was the truth. I've been taking care of her during this time, so she has grown quite close to me. After hearing William's narration, Dumbledore nodded with a look that didn't reveal much. You've raised her well. He looked at Mrs. Loris's glossy fur shining in the moonlight, with a gentle tone. So, Headmaster, what exactly is the Chamber of Secrets? William asked directly. I don't know either. Dumbledore pondered for a moment before continuing, but the chamber was opened before, 50 years ago, and that incident led to the death of a little wizard in the castle. His gaze turned somewhat sorrowful. Who was it? Dumbledore didn't answer, but William still noticed his gaze. The sadness in the old man's eyes was growing. Moaning Myrtle. William stared at the motionless ghost on the bed, instinctively frowning. If it really was her, then wasn't this sister a bit too miserable? Driven to the end, and not let go even as a ghost. Then what about the culprit? Was he caught? William asked further. The Ministry of Magic declared that they had caught him, but since he was still a minor, they broke his magic wand. Was it Hagrid? William immediately thought of the half-blood giant who had once, while helping him apply an engorgement charm to pumpkins, inadvertently mentioned what had happened to his wand. You're very smart, William. William nodded and remained silent. He could tell Dumbledore intended to end this conversation. And just as he had predicted, as Madame Pomfrey turned to report the situation, Dumbledore took William to leave the hospital wing together. You should go back and rest, William, Dumbledore said softly as they stood at the corner of the Slytherin dungeon. As for the defense against the dark arts class. At the last moment, he brought up an old topic. I have an idea, perhaps Severus would be willing. Willing for what? A duel club. A circle of little wizards gathered around the bulletin board at the entrance to the Great Hall, and Seamus Finnegan, who squeezed to the front of the crowd, shouted, reading out the notice that had just been posted on the board. The first meeting of the duel club will be held in the Great Hall tonight after dinner. Are they finally planning to teach us some real skills? A first-year Ravenclaw wizard said loudly, but he didn't really need to say it out loud. Everyone understood what the boy meant. Lockhart's performance lessons were equally distributed across the entire year level. Harry and Hermione were also standing on the outskirts of the crowd, with Hermione craning her neck to see inside while Harry seemed somewhat absent-minded. Finally, as his gaze swept incessantly over the entrance, he finally caught sight of the figure he was searching for, one of them. But now, it didn't seem that exciting. Harry watched the two people's intertwined arms, struggling slightly as he walked forward. Hello. Oh, good morning, you're Harry Potter, right? Cedric, who was talking to Cho Chang, turned to look at the boy holding him by the arm with some confusion. Well, what's up? I wanted to know if you saw William today. Harry forced himself not to look at the girl next to Cedric, internally telling himself that the two were just friends, and then he asked. No, He wasn't in the dormitory this morning. Cedric shook his head. Maybe he's gone to the library again. Okay, you guys are going too. Harry nodded, but he looked a little reluctant. Hogsmeade. Have fun. Don't worry, you can go next year too, with your special someone. Cedric gave Harry a meaningful wink before turning to leave the foyer before Harry could respond. What did he say? Hermione turned around after finally seeing the whole notice board and saw a somewhat despondent Harry. Nothing. He said he hadn't seen William and suggested he might be in the library. Harry seemed a bit out of it, but he didn't know which part was causing it. Have you forgotten? We just came back from the library. Really? What's up with you? Hermione sighed and continued, don't worry about yesterday. Even if Snape got fired, it couldn't be William who got expelled. It's illegal for adult wizards to cast spells on little wizards. Really? Of course, you might as well look forward to tonight's duel club. Who do you think will host it? Anyone. As long as it's not Harry. This morning you said it shouldn't be who? Hermione opened her mouth wide, utterly surprised. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the long dining tables in the hall had vanished, and a gilded stage appeared along one wall on the right. The ceiling had once again turned velvety black, illuminated by hundreds of floating candles. The hall was crowded with students at this moment, who were excitedly looking at the stage before them. Harry looked somewhat bewildered at the two familiar figures standing at the front of the stage, Lockhart and Snape. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Was his crow's mouth really that effective? Looking at Snape's gloomy face, Harry instinctively glanced around. As Hermione mentioned this morning, adult wizards attacking underage little wizards is illegal, but since Snape was out without any issues, then. Yet, after staring at almost everyone's face and not seeing the person he was looking for, Harry still hadn't found them. England, Wiltshire, Malfoy Manor. As dusk descended, faint stars began to emerge in the dark red sky. In the center of the expansive estate stood a massive iron-gray building, the exterior walls of which bore the traces of time. A well-designed garden surrounded the central mansion, trimmed hedges with pure white peacocks often strolling through. Among the vast mansion, only a few rooms were lit, the kitchen being one of them. Warm flames swayed slowly in the fireplace, while a thin, small figure busily worked near the stove, its head wrapped in many bandages, its old face full of wrinkles. As the house elf kept moving its arms, gleaming silver tableware danced lightly on the stove as if performing a ballet. Soon, exquisitely crafted dishes floated to the dining table, and the little elf sat by the fireplace as if relieved. Bang! With a faint sound, the flames in the fireplace turned a bizarre shade of green, and in the next moment, a black figure stepped out of the flames. Lucius, you're back. A blonde woman in a deep green dress walked in from outside the dining room. Nancy, what is it? Lucius Malfoy's black robe floated up, landing on the coat rack in the corner of the dining room. The man looked down towards the bothersome little elf by the fireplace, kicking it on the butt. Why is it here again today? Is Dobby still not found? The elderly elf, having received a slow reaction, rolled away and vanished on the spot. Still no news. Narcissa Malfoy sat down at the dining table, raising her hand to tidy her hair. So, how's it going today? Fudge, that bastard, is the same as ever, wanting to wring gold out of my pocket. As for the others on the school board, Lucius sat opposite the woman, rolling up his sleeves and gathering his light golden hair at the back, not worth mentioning them either. If Dobby isn't back by tomorrow, I'll think of a way. After generations of house elf mistreatment, the Malfoy clan's house elves had long been depleted. Since Dobby disappeared last month, all the burden fell upon the barely alive shack back there, whose extremely old and fragile condition meant that everything from tidying to the dishes it prepared was rarely satisfactory. But house elves had, indeed, become scarce under the Secrecy Act, and the black market prices were, in truth, painful. Lucius didn't plan to spend a fortune on a mere house servant. Perhaps one could be snatched from Hogwarts Castle. Except Dumbledore would certainly not agree, but if his plan succeeded, it should force Dumbledore to hand over the headmaster position willingly by that Christmas, then Hogwarts would be his Guna Dark. I'm asking about Draco's matter. Narcissa frowned, evidently dissatisfied with the man's feigned ignorance. It's been delayed for 3 months now, why hasn't the school board replied yet? Draco. He's a boy, and it's just a little slug incident anyway. Lucius's tone gained a bit of impatience. He always disagreed with his partner's parenting style. Excessive pampering would only turn Draco into an arrogant fool. Yet similarly, Narcissa didn't agree with Lucius's perspective, slamming the silver tableware in her hands onto the table, making a crisp ding sound. Lucius, he is my son. He was humiliated at school, now writing home, do you expect me to be a coward? He's my son too. Lucius roared quietly, as both clearly lost interest in the table full of dishes, and besides, that something Weasley is lying in Hogwarts hospital wing now. What do you want me to do? Drag him up from bed in front of Dumbledore and have our dear son curse him? Can't hit the young ones, can't you beat the old ones? Narcissa growled quietly, Arthur Weasley is just sitting in the Ministry of Magic now, can't you slip the fat pig minister some cash and drive the red-haired baboon out? You think I didn't try? Did you even try? Ha! Just wait, by Christmas time Dumbledore himself won't escape. Lucius smirked and twitched his mouth, finally unable to resist revealing the evil plan he had been scheming for a long time. What do you mean? Do you have a plan to overturn Dumbledore? Of course, I put the Dark Lord. But before Lucius could fully divulge his plan, both who were seated at the table suddenly seemed to sense something, subconsciously looking back towards the dining room door. Why did you stop talking? A tall figure shrouded in a black robe stood at the dining room door, tilting his head in confusion as he looked at the two who had ceased their conversation. Who are you? Lucius's memory snapped back to 10 years ago when seeing that somewhat familiar face, Greyback. How dare you appear here? The man was both shocked and angry, warily staring at the man at the door and reaching towards his waist. Thump, thump. The sound distracted Lucius, as a considerably shorter figure than Fenrir stepped out from behind the werewolf. The utterly unfamiliar young face made Lucius frown instinctively, and you are. Good day, Mr. Malfoy. The boy removed his hat and glanced at the table's standard late 19th century English dinner, his eyes flickering with reminiscence, looks like I haven't missed dinner. Is salt free at your place? William put down the silver fork in his hand, beginning to wonder if the other two people sitting at the dining table had no sense of taste. Lucius Malfoy did not respond. His gaze was fixed on the boy who had been babbling to himself ever since he walked in. With short black hair and light blue eyes, he seemed no different from those little wizards at Hogwarts except for being a bit more handsome. But at this moment, the werewolf Fenrir Greyback was standing straight behind the boy. Having navigated the magic realm for nearly 30 years, Lucius naturally sensed something unusual. He didn't think someone unknown could convince a defiant brute like Fenrir. Even in the days when the Dark Lord was around, the Death Eaters and Fenrir's werewolf pack only had a cooperative relationship. Although a big reason was Voldemort's disdain for werewolves, Lucius knew just what kind of mischief that stupid dog had stirred behind Voldemort's back. While part of this was due to the Dark Lord turning a blind eye, the major reason was that they couldn't lose the kind of formidable ally werewolves provided. A group capable of biting your children, condemning them to a lifetime of discrimination and an incurable condition, werewolves were a major source of fear used by the Death Eaters, after all, who didn't have a couple of kids at home. And now this usually untamed, ultimate weapon, was standing meekly behind an underage little wizard. Could it be? Who on earth are you? Narcissa could no longer take it. She slammed the table in anger, pulling out a magic wand from her sleeve. I don't care who you are, and you, werewolf. Get out of my house now, you're not welcome here, either of you. The woman's lips were pressed into a line, her already pale cheeks drained of color as she raised her magic wand towards the two. Oh, shit. Lucius looked at his enraged wife, cold sweat trickling swiftly down his spine. But he could understand Narcissa's fury. The year the Dark Lord disappeared, their son Draco Malfoy had just turned 1. At that time, Greyback was hunted down by a large group of Aurors deployed by the Ministry of Magic, forcing him to turn to Lucius. Yet at that time, that damned werewolf had more than once threatened the two of them with Draco Malfoy. Helpless and unwilling to court trouble during such a time, Lucius could only use sufficient leverage to get that werewolf to leave the British Isles. But that incident left Narcissa a bit traumatized, especially since a werewolf had once placed their paw on her son's face. But Lucius never imagined that this infamous fugitive would dare to return. And the boy with him. Lucius turned his gaze back to William. Handsome appearance, tall build. Although the eye color didn't match, everything else fit the rumors. Could it be? Cold sweat dripped down the man's pale forehead as he halted his wife from uttering more harsh words. He hesitated, then stood up, and under everyone's watchful eyes, knelt down on one knee, his gaze focusing on the boy's face as he softly spoke. Master. Narcissa's expression first showed confusion, then as if remembering something, her expression drastically changed, her already bloodless face turning as white as a sheet. She almost dropped the magic wand, pointing at the two as if electrocuted, kneeling down behind Lucius. It was hard to tell if she did so willingly or if her legs were just too weak. William, who was wiping his mouth, felt bewildered. Even when Narcissa had drawn her wand, it didn't faze him, as he had confidence in eliminating all living things in this manner within 1 minute, including the fish in the fountain pool at the entrance. But now, could it be the latest trend in the magic realm? Didn't they know there have been no slaves since the founding? It was Saturday. After parting with the dear headmaster the previous night, he had immediately returned to the room of requirement, having spent a whole night and half a day without sleep, wrapping up his recent research projects. Then, without stopping, he pulled the werewolf whom he'd imposed the Imperio curse on over to Malfoy Manor. And at this moment, seeing the two kneeling in front of him, he couldn't shake the feeling that he might have fallen asleep from exhaustion. After all, why? He had considered various developments regarding their meeting, coercion, recognizing a wise surrender, starting a fight immediately, even the scenario where neither of them was home, he had prepared for. But he never imagined they would kneel and call him master directly. Seeing William's grim expression without any response, Lucius became even more certain of his guess, lowering his platinum blonde head even further. Master, he stumbled to speak, his shoulders trembling uncontrollably, we have always been waiting for your return. Return. William's gaze flickered for a moment, then he seemed to understand something. This old white man is a Death Eater, and standing behind him now is also a Death Eater, still the hardest to deal with. A misunderstanding naturally arose when two former colleagues met. He mistook me for that Voldemort. Tisk, why does it feel a bit demeaning? After hesitating for a moment, William cleared his throat. Is this how you waited for my return? As he spoke, his gaze swept around. He had to admit, the Malfoy family truly lived up to being the wealthiest in the British magic realm. Gilded columns, a Buckingham Palace replica carpet, a fireplace carved from a whole slab of marble, luxury was practically etched into every face of the Malfoy family. Master. Receiving a confirming response, the tremble in Lucius's body became even more pronounced. He struggled to speak, nearly prostrating himself on the ground, his pale face pressed tightly against the cold tiles. We were merely preserving this wealth for you until you returned among us. Hey, is that so? William didn't refute, straightforwardly retrieving a blackened diary from his robe and flinging it in front of the man. Malfoy, care to explain? I did it all for our plan. You've instructed me to deliver this notebook to Hogwarts if necessary. I merely faithfully executed your orders, Master. I. At the sight of the diary, Malfoy almost stammered incoherently, shouting aloud. You're lying. William squinted, a faint blue glow in his eyes. No, Master, I did not. Lucius's eyes revealed a hint of despair. Shall I help you recall some memory? No, Master, please don't. Crucio. The piercing scream echoed through the vast emptiness of Malfoy Manor. Fear. That long-lost, almost forgotten fear surged back into the woman's bones as she looked at her husband, tortured near to silence by the Crucio curse. Narcissa Malfoy felt a sense of unreality. 10 minutes ago, they were still. No time to think, or rather, she couldn't think. The woman nearly crawled on hands and knees to the boy in front of her, trembling as her lips touched the soles of his shoes. Bang! Watching the woman he had kicked flying away, William stood up, then disdainfully wiped his boots on Malfoy. Tisk, never mind that he's not interested in older women, but molesting a minor means going to Azkaban, doesn't she know that? This year happens to be his third time turning 15, still a standard legal minor. Master, please forgive me. Lucius lay on the ground like a dying dog, struggling to get up. He had no time to look at the woman who had been kicked away, his head bowed low, his disheveled pale blonde hair falling, covering his fear-filled blood-red eyes. Forgive you. William didn't bother imitating Voldemort's tone. First of all, this person is taboo in the entire magical realm. William has no idea how he usually talks to these Death Eaters. Secondly, what's the difference anyway? Can you expect someone just tortured to the brink of insanity to have any discernment? If he doesn't lose control of his bladder, it counts as maturity. William knows all too well the power of his Crucio curse. Besides, he doesn't actually want to be Voldemort. Caressing the magic wand in his hand, William squinted his eyes dangerously. Time to extract information, and as for whether or not to kill afterward. Depend on his mood. Isn't it said that the Dark Lord kills when in a bad mood? Just right, so is he. If he doesn't kill, he's in a bad mood. Bushy. Master, I did this all to preserve power. After you disappeared, the Ministry of Magic launched a purge. We had to play weak for now. Only this way can we support your return. Successful. The man's words were somewhat incoherent, saliva dripping from his pale blonde hair onto the carpet, leaving a foul-smelling stain. For what? For your betrayal of me. William raised his magic wand. No, Master. Seeing this, Narcissa crawled back over. Crucio. Ah. The woman's screams were even more piercingly sharp. William lowered his wand expressionlessly. It's said that dark arts need evil intentions to reach full power, but with his mastery of ancient magic, he doesn't need such emotional aids to amplify the curse's malevolence to its maximum. He sat on the chair brought by Fenrir, his heavy boots pressing on the man's head. Continue, Malfoy, I'm giving you a chance. I. The man's body shook more and more violently. Lucius didn't know whether he was scared or angry. But what good is anger? He unclenched his fists and spoke with a tone abjectly humble. Master, you told me before that this notebook would be an essential part of the plan. Until last year, I heard about your return to Hogwarts. I was overjoyed, so I immediately planned to send it over, hoping to assist you. As one of the main members of the Hogwarts school board, Lucius Malfoy knew a lot of insider details, such as a certain, missing, former defense against the dark arts professor, but he hadn't anticipated the Dark Lord's return being so swift. So your plan was successful. William raised his eyebrows slightly. Last year. It seems the Dark Lord's return isn't just tabloid gossip. Well, given that it's hardly surprising Voldemort would be the final boss in the novel, Harry Potter, it seems. Lucius did save his own skin. Though William's strategy has always been to underestimate his enemies, he also gives due attention to them in tactics, something that those poachers who died under his wand knew full well. Since that so-called Dark Lord is bound to return to wreak havoc, then. Yes, Master, the plan was successful. After the attack, almost all the board members are putting pressure on Dumbledore. The old undead bastard is about to step down, and then, the whole of Hogwarts will be, no, it will be yours. Lucius raised his head, managing to squeeze a barely presentable smile on his grimacing face. Is that so? But I've just gained Dumbledore's trust. You're putting me in a tough spot. Picking up the diary on the floor, William dragged out his words. Even an idiot would understand he's unhappy. Master, I didn't know your plan. Lucius's head bowed once more. But, ignorance is no sin. Since you acted unwittingly. William has roughly sorted it out by now. This diary is something Voldemort entrusted to this Malfoy. Yet this bumbling fool has no idea what the diary does, only that it can create chaos at Hogwarts. Naturally, the attack this year, he took as his own achievement. Master. Hope emerged in Malfoy's eyes. Keep my current identity secret. Don't let anyone know, not even those with you. William took a deep breath. Having finalized a plan, I am now a student at Hogwarts. You don't know me, understood? Yes, Master. Lucius nodded quickly. Also, this one here belongs to your family, right? William waved his hand. Fenrir stiffly opened the suitcase he held, pulling out a tightly bound little elf. Yes, Master, if it interfered with your plan, I'll punish. Give it a piece of clothing. Yes, Master, I'll just, Don't understand. Yes. Lucius hurriedly pulled off his tie, stuffing it into Dobby's protruding hand. The little elf's eyes were almost overflowing with tears. Good, put it back. Before it could cry out, Fenrir had placed it back in the suitcase. Finally, extend your arm. Pondering for a moment, William realized the final flaw. Fenrir had told him that the Death Eaters all bore an irremovable mark on their arms. Irremovable. What a joke. Under William's watchful gaze, Lucius trembled as he extended his left arm. At the edge of his rolled-up sleeve, a shallow red mark wasn't very obvious, yet the twisted, sprawling skull design sent chills even upon a single glance. What atrocious taste. William muttered under his breath. Wah what? Lucius hadn't heard clearly. Imprint. William didn't respond. Instead, he pressed his wand to the dark mark. In the next moment, the light red mark disappeared, replaced by a fiery blue pattern. Albania, deep in the forest. Hiss. An erumpent's near-rotting corpse lay silent as a pure black python raised its head, dazedly staring at the sky, its pitch-black tongue tasting the air for a moment. The next moment, the python seemed to sense something, its jaws opened wide, and its silent roar caused the entire forest to tremble. Hogwarts, Great Hall. So, Headmaster Dumbledore entrusted your defense against the Dark Arts Professor, a third-degree Merlin Order honoree, member of the Merlin Knight Order, honorary member of the Dark Force Defense League, and five-time winner of the Wizard Weekly Most Charming Smile Award, me, Lockhart, and Professor Snape, to host this little club. On stage, Lockhart paused for a breath. Of course, Professor Snape says he knows a bit about dueling, and he very generously agreed to join me. Before we officially start, to give you a simple demonstration, he said, grinning. So, Professor Snape, before we begin, is there anything you'd like to say? The previously noisy hall quieted down, as everyone's gaze turned to the other figure standing at the edge of the stage. Why? Why now? Under everyone's watchful eyes, Snape's face looked extremely unpleasant, his right hand clutching the front of his left arm, his sinister gaze sweeping across the hall. The stinging pain on his left arm hadn't faded, he certainly knew what it meant. There was the dark mark once planted by Voldemort himself, which had extinguished 10 years ago and gradually faded away, eventually vanishing from the skin completely, as if it had never existed. And because of this, despite Dumbledore's repeated emphasis, Snape still felt he might be overly worried. Things might not be that serious, Voldemort might never rise again, and the prophecy might be false. But the man bent down, hair falling before his eyes. He finally spotted the boy he was searching for among the crowd, the lightning-shaped scar, the loathsome face, and those eyes he could never forget. No, he has to take him to Dumbledore. Right now. The Dark Lord might appear at any moment. What's the matter, Severus? Lockhart bent down, his long purple-red silk hat tilting a bit. He waved it casually before the man's eyes, speaking flippantly, feeling unwell. It's okay, I can temporarily take over the club hosting duties, and perhaps Professor Flitwick. Shut up. What did you say? Lockhart's smile froze. Snape did not repeat himself. He shoved the man blocking his way aside, and quickly walked to the front of the stage, his black cloak flying behind him. This is my club, Dumbledore merely allowed you to assist. Severus, I must point out. Shut up, we are not that close. Fine, Professor Snape, please remember, I am a third-degree Merlin Order honoree, member of the Merlin Knight Order, honorary member of the Dark Force Defense League. Each word Lockhart spoke seemed to make his heels a bit higher. And then, Snape said expressionlessly, his cold voice breaking through, do I need to borrow a unicycle for you from the circus? Or is this place too small for you to show off your clown tricks? His speech was fast, quite unlike his usual sarcastic tone. Silence enveloped the great hall. Then, not knowing who started it but Harry clearly saw it was the Weasley twins, applause began to echo throughout the hall, with quite a few little wizards even climbing onto the teacher's dining table to clap, and were promptly yanked down by their prefect. You're clapping for Snape. Hermione was stunned, watching Harry join the commotion. I hate both of them equally. Harry was almost clapping his palms red. If they directly start fighting and both end up injured and in the hospital wing together. Then next week will be the happiest week since school started. Harry was already fantasizing about a life at Hogwarts without Snape, without Lockhart, and without obsessive fans. If life really turned out that way, he could hardly imagine how sunny, cheerful, positive, and forward-thinking he would be as a little wizard. Listening to the relentless applause and boos around him, Lockhart's barely maintained smile completely broke apart. I want to duel you. His face flushed red, seemingly caught up in the rush of blood. The hall fell silent once again, the little wizards tensely watching the scene with anticipation for Snape's response. Of course, demonstration. Snape paused for a moment, then nodded, looking back. This is Hogwarts, the Dark Lord couldn't possibly appear here directly, and the dark mark earlier hadn't indicated a summons, meaning Voldemort hasn't planned to gather the Death Eaters yet. After a moment of calm, Snape's thoughts finally stabilized quite a bit. No. It's a due, fine, it's a demonstration. Lockhart's fervor came and went quickly. He wanted to utter a few more harsh words, but ended up wilting. Professor's dueling doesn't sound very dignified. Don't worry, Severus, I'll go easy on you. Snape did not answer. The two stood on opposite ends of the long stage, turning to face each other, and simultaneously bowed, but at least Lockhart bowed. Snape merely tilted his head perfunctorily. Both raised their magic wands to their chests. As you can see, we're holding our wands in a typical dueling stance. Lockhart addressed the quiet crowd, clearly not planning to give up narration. On the count of 3, we'll cast the first spell. Of course, it's just a spar. And then, 1, 2, 3. Stupefy. Red light pierced through the great hall's air, and Lockhart, wearing his purple-red robes, was hit by the spell and thrown back violently, crashing against the hall's wall, tumbling down onto the stage, unable to rise. Looks like your Professor Lockhart decided to take a good nap. After Snape's words, a group of Slytherins below excitedly applauded and cheered, while other houses, although they were thrilled, appeared somewhat disappointed. They had evidently hoped both would be on the ground unable to rise. The tension in Snape's heart seemed to fade quite a bit. He toyed with the wand in his hand, his tone calm. All right, it seems our demonstration needs a pause, but perhaps we can find a student to cooperate with me. This time even Slytherin stopped cheering. Everyone instinctively held their breath. The little wizards gazed fearfully at the man on stage. Harry felt a sense of suffocation, because whether it was an illusion or not, he seemed to feel Snape's gaze directed at him. Is it too late to drop out now? Well, ha. Staring at the boy off stage, Snape's lips curved into a smile. Wait, the man sensed something, looked up, and turned towards the not far figure who just pushed open the door and entered the hall. Ha, Mr. Richard of Hufflepuff, please, come on up. Me. Having just returned from Malfoy Manor, William stopped in confusion, faced with numerous gazes in the hall, unsure whether his left foot outside the door should step in or not. Just giving everyone a demonstration, and making up for the after-school tutoring I missed. Snape stood at the edge of the stage, with a half-smile. Demonstration. Anyone who wasn't blind and saw Lockhart being carried off the stage just moments ago couldn't possibly believe Snape's excuse, because he had said the same thing earlier, and then Lockhart silently went into dreamland. Now, why was Snape targeting the transfer student? Many little wizards weren't aware of the relationship between the two. They initially thought Snape would find a 6th or 7th year Gryffindor student, but who could imagine he chose a first year who had only been at Hogwarts for half a year? Is this the cost of being late? If it really doesn't work, how about not going? As William moved through the crowd, Cedric grabbed his arm. He knew very well the relationship between William and Snape. Not great, just utterly awful. You can completely refuse, Snape can't force you. You all act like I'm heading to the gallows. Looking at the group of Hufflepuffs with expressions of bidding farewell to a hero, William felt a bit helpless. But Cedric wanted to say something in a low voice. It's fine. I originally thought I'd have to fight tonight, but ended up being flattered. William shook his head, indicating for the crowd to stay calm. Perfect. Time to loosen up a bit. The Forbidden Forest isn't much of a challenge anymore. I've almost cleared out a few nests of spiders, barely encountering any trolls, and the poachers are gone. What? No one heard William's last mumbling statement. William didn't answer. He walked through the crowd, stepping up to the stage. You're here. Snape's eyes narrowed slightly. Don't use cliched lines. Weren't you about to demonstrate? Richard, you still don't seem to understand the situation. Snape's eyes narrowed insidiously. Regardless, I am still your teacher now, and you must always address me as Sir or Professor. All right, Professor, why does your head look pointy? No, I mean, it has a scent. William stepped back 2 paces. By the way, sir, I remember Professor Lockhart selling bird snake egg yolk shampoo. It's probably the only genuine product under his name. Just a bit pricey, but the professor's salary at Hogwarts should be decent. William paused a moment, not suppressing his volume. Oh, right, I remember the Potter family too. Shut up. Now, stand over there. Snape's facade seemed to crack a bit. Taking a deep breath, he struggled to contain his rage. Professor, as a staff member, you should pay attention to your image. Stationed on the opposite side of the stage, William continued his earnest persuasion, while cheers resonated in his ears, realizing his actions gained audience admiration. Hope you can still laugh afterward. Now, draw your wand, Snape said coldly. William obediently raised his redwood wand vertically before him, bowing shallowly under Snape's gaze, reminding him of those days at the Bell Tower Duel Club a century ago. Now, attack with your spell. Expelliarmus. A red light flashed, and with no chance to dodge, Snape was hit with a stumble. His wand flew out and landed in William's hand. The hall remained silent before a surging wave of applause erupted. Woo-hoo! Harry almost jumped with excitement, earlier thinking William helped him dodge another disaster, feeling a bit guilty. But seeing William's performance now, he felt excited enough to jump on stage and kiss him. Making Snape visibly falter is a great achievement many little Gryffindor wizards attempted but failed to achieve. Calm down, look at Snape's face. I feel like William's in trouble, Hermione blocked Harry, pointing at the stage. As she said, Snape's face was dark enough to drip water. What do we do? Harry swallowed, reacting in concern. I think we need someone to stop Snape. You watch here, I'll find Professor McGonagall. Hermione hesitated momentarily, feeling her parchment, then turned and ran out of the hall. Wait. Before Harry could say he wanted to join, the girl vanished behind the hall's door. Very well, next is practical teaching. Snape's voice drew the attention of all little wizards once more. Taking his wand from William's grip, Snape stepped back to position with a scowled face. Contrary to expectations, he didn't pursue William's premature surprise attack, merely speaking through gritted teeth after a brief silence. All right, letting down the provocation worked enough. William raised his wand vertically before himself. Trash talk can significantly elevate an opponent's magical attack skill. This is the experience William concluded after single-handedly clearing the Ashwinder group from the Scottish Highlands in his 6th year, armed with a magic wand and a patch of Chinese chomping cabbages in the garden. During that time, overwhelming combat experience led to boredom in battles, often resolving them using several crucio and a killing curse, causing an unconscious mental shift. At that point, he hadn't tried tapping into the secret vault's forces. Noticing the internal shift, he realized dark arts were eroding his soul. Not a promising sign, not wanting a future as a scarred black wizard, wearing a tattered black robe, growing 3 arms, enticing kids to his shabby cabin for experiments. That wasn't the future William wanted. Thus, throughout the 7th year, he nearly gave up carnage, all magic aimed solely at self-improvement. With assistance from ancient magic, secret vault, and other guardian portraits, he finally shook off emotional interference. The Black Wizard Slaughter Machine emerged from the castle after a year, then, ended up 100 years into the future. So this constituted his first official duel following his return, hopeful for a surprise from the opponent. At least breaking through his iron armor spell would be something, otherwise truly boring. Both mutually bowed, almost simultaneously raising their wands. Stupefy. Protega. Snape's wand sparked, a blinding red shoosh significantly thicker than the one hitting Lockhart rushed at William, halting inches from the boy, clashing with air, eliciting violent purple ripples. Well played iron armor spell. Snape's expression fell slightly, raising his wand. Is this your supposed talent? He evidently remembered William's claim in the headmaster's office. What love potion did you feed Dumbledore? I fed Dumbledore love potion. William blinked. Snape took advantage, tossing 3 charms rapidly, colliding with the boy's pale purple barrier until both vanished interiorly. Clearly not Snape's ideal, face looking displeased. Want a glimpse of my talent, Professor? Be my guest. Then, William recalled the scene from the night before, Sectum Sempra. Snape's steps faltered uncontrollably for a moment. A sharp aura pierced straight towards the man's eyes. Protega. Protega, he waved his wand, a pale halo lit up around him. But soon, large cracks began to appear on the halo. Immediately after, Like glass shattered by a bullet, the light completely broke apart. Snape instinctively dodged to the right, stumbling to the edge of the stage. The sharp aura grazed his earlobe, and the ribbons hanging from the ceiling, meticulously arranged by Lockhart, snapped without warning, falling to the ground. How did you do that? Snape's face was extremely grim, his fingers trembling slightly on the wand. Talent, Professor. William stood still, smiling, without pursuing further. Feeling the sharp pain from his right ear and the warm flow running into his collar, Snape remained silent. The entire hall fell into a deathly silence once again. Everyone instinctively held their breath, none expected things to escalate to such a situation. Even though William's first disarming spell took Snape by surprise, nobody thought William could actually defeat Snape, a seasoned professor who had taught at Hogwarts for over a decade, against a transfer student who had just been in school for half a year. Honestly, William's support group formed due to his gentle demeanor, handsome appearance, and for sending the much disliked Filch to the hospital wing. Not really. So a group of little wizards had spontaneously formed. The Richard support group had already begun planning to snatch him from Snape's hands. Before Cedric could sacrifice himself, the situation took a turn. Yet, some still believed they were dreaming. For instance, a boy with platinum blonde hair, Malfoy, stared in disbelief at Snape's bloodied ear, swallowing back the cheers he had been prepared to shout. Professor, your ear. Shut up. Snape snapped with a grim look, raising his head to glare at William with malicious eyes. You shouldn't be using the spell I invented against me, just like that mongrel James Potter. His voice was low, seemingly still worried about being overheard by someone. So, what are you planning to do now? William's eyes revealed a hint of realization. James Potter. All this while, it was psychological trauma from youth. No, this should be called childhood shadow. But still, why take it out on Harry? And what does this have to do with you not washing your hair? Is it because your enemy monopolized the shampoo industry, so you just stopped washing your hair altogether? Thankfully, you don't have an ex-girlfriend selling clothes. Without warning, several spells shot from Snape's wand tip, and throughout it all, aside from waving his wand, Snape made no unnecessary sounds. Sneak attacks are not a good habit. William didn't use the iron armor spell. He dodged slightly to evade the attacks, and in the stunned gazes of the little wizards, he silently cast several spells as well. Kidding, he had once been cornered in a yard by a gang of black wizards led by Victor Rookwood. He would have been evaded without some body technique. Protega. Protega. Another protective spell, and this time the white light lasted longer than before. Snape sidestepped the last spell, his wand waving continuously, each spell flashing and whistling sharply through the air. Disarming spell, stunning spell, and even a white defense spell. William didn't bother to defend. The little wizards had never seen such a scene before, their mouths agape, heads wobbling, dizzy as if watching a special effects heavy tokusatsu film. Finally, a spell flew out of the tokusatsu set. No, off the stage. Finite Incantatum. Finite Incantatum. The scarlet spell dissipated in the air just before it hit a little wizard's head at the edge of the stage. Watch it, don't hurt the audience. William frowned, seemingly because he appeared too relaxed. Snape was failing in composure. Phew. Snape didn't respond, looking at the still unscathed William, then clearly recognizing a fact. He is stronger than me. Not just a little stronger. He could see that William, even under such high pressure, was handling everything with ease, even having the capacity to help resolve an off-course spell for a little wizard. His abilities were even more intimidating than some seasoned aurors. Snape, having stayed at Hogwarts teaching for so long, knew his strength had waned significantly, far weaker than his peak over a decade ago, but still, this was not something a little wizard who just encountered the magic realm for half a year could achieve. Perhaps, Dumbledore, or even the Dark Lord. No, Snape shook his head, this was definitely impossible. But why would someone like him infiltrate Hogwarts? What was his purpose? Did Dumbledore know? Why would he allow such a person to stay at the school? And, why was he approaching Harry Potter? Snape's mind was a whirl of confusion. He wished he could go confront the white-bearded old man immediately, but he was now in an awkward position. Expelliarmus. Expelliarmus. Almost simultaneously, red lights shot from the tips of two wands, colliding at the center of the stage, the blinding sparks stinging everyone's pupils. Snape growled as he clutched his wand. He could feel it trying to leap from his grasp. Roar. Suddenly, the swaths of ribbons that had fallen to the floor seemed to come alive. They spun in the air, transforming into a bright red lion, then charged towards the intersection of the two spells with a roar. Boom. Severus. With an explosion, the two spells dissipated in the air. The crowd at the outskirts of the hall began to scatter. Professor McGonagall in her checkered wizard robe walked over from the gathering's edge, her face as tense as ever, though her heaving chest indicated her anger. Dueling a fifth-year student officially. Professor McGonagall squinted, staring at Snape. Snape did not respond, standing there, panting, looking grim. Cough, cough, may I speak a fair word? Lockhart appeared from nowhere, stepping onto the stage, clearly having been awake for a while. This student's abilities are quite impressive, almost half of mine. With that, he moved to sling an arm around William's shoulder. Stupefy. Stupefy. Boom. The man's forehead hit the stage floor. Professor McGonagall silently looked up at William. Cough, cough, it slipped. Lockhart was taken to the hospital wing, but it wasn't because William hit him too hard. Primarily, he fell quite hard without any defense, and no one present wanted to see him get up again and continue his bragging. Under Professor McGonagall's silent gaze, Snape put down his magic wand. Thus, amidst thunderous and prolonged applause, William stepped down from the stage, with the little wizards chanting his name, reaching out to touch the boy as if they were embracing their king. How did you do it? As William passed through the enthusiastic Gryffindors and Ravenclaws and returned to the Hufflepuff crowd, Cedric immediately struggled his way to his side, asking excitedly. It was hard not to be excited. This was perhaps the first time in the history of Hogwarts. A minor wizard, having been enrolled for merely half a year, nearly defeated a professor in a direct duel. Anyone who wasn't blind could see that Snape wasn't just demonstrating, as he claimed. Even those newly enrolled little wizards could see he was serious, yet William remained calm, not even breaking a sweat. William didn't answer. He looked up and down at the excited boy in front of him, then leaned close to his ear. Do you want to learn? He whispered. Of course. The boy responded without any hesitation. Then follow me in a while. All right. William nodded. Over the past 6 months, he had a good impression of this Hufflepuff boy, brave, smart, friendly, loyal to friends, and even excellent academically. Except for some mistakes typical of teenage boys, he exemplified the peak of little wizards at his age. Moreover, he saw the shadows of several friends in the boy, though those people were probably all dead. People in the magic realm do tend to live long lives, but there aren't many like Dumbledore. Besides, there have been multiple wars in the past century, and apart from portraits and wizard hats, he hadn't found any familiar faces. With the recent increase in research workload, he was just planning to recruit some help. No, finding a trustworthy apprentice. Severus. I have urgent business with the headmaster now, I'll leave it to you here. Looking at the excited crowd beneath the stage, Snape didn't give Professor McGonagall a chance to continue speaking. He put away his magic wand, turned around, and swiftly walked off the stage. The group of Slytherins parted in the middle, watching as the black cloak fluttered out of the side door of the hall. Sonorous. Sonorous. Professor McGonagall pointed her magic wand at her throat, and the next moment, her voice overwhelmed the noisy hall. Now, the event is over. Everyone, return to your respective common rooms under the prefect's guidance. Her words were drowned out by an even louder and more synchronized sigh. We haven't had a lesson yet. The duel club was just getting started, a little wizard among the crowd desperately shouted. The showdown between Snape and William had clearly excited everyone, and they all shouted together, unwilling to return to their dorms. Even though Percy nearly shouted himself hoarse, nobody wanted to listen, and he was then dragged to the back of the crowd by 2 boys who also had red hair. But Professor Snape has already left. McGonagall was somewhat helpless. Her voice could no longer suppress the bustling little wizards. And observing the plight of the prefects trying to assist her, it was evident things had reached a critical point of excitement. You could teach us too, or let William do it, he just beat Snape. Right, let William do it. William. 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 The crowd's cries grew more fervent, and in the end, just like 2.5 minutes before, they were all chanting William's name together. Without understanding the background, one might think it was some cult gathering, with William being their revered evil god. But in the end, McGonagall was a veteran professor with decades of experience. Although such rebellious scenarios were rare, she quickly restored order. However, the request for William to teach was ultimately turned down. Although she didn't know how William defeated Snape, by the time she arrived, William and Snape were already in the final stage of their spell duel, and she instinctively interrupted their fight without thinking much. When she considered asking about the details, Snape had already left in a huff. So, she subconsciously assumed Snape held back, while the little wizards believed the battle she interrupted was won by William. Otherwise, how could a fifth-year wizard defeat a Hogwarts professor head-on? That second scenario sounded far too fantastical. Thus, she conjured a lion once more, and its deep roar interrupted the little wizard's repetitions. The club can continue, but McGonagall's gaze swept across the crowd below, finally resting on William's face. No using evil curses, no harming others, no. Professor McGonagall laid down more than a dozen prohibitions, stopping just short of no casting spells with magic wands. Under her direction, the crowd gradually dispersed, and the little wizards paired off, each finding their opponent. Now, all the wizards assigned number 1, raise your magic wands, and recall the disarming spell used by Professor Snape, and William just now. Professor McGonagall's voice sounded from the stage, then, recite the spell. Expelliarmus. Expelliarmux. Expelliarmus. Among the crowd, few successfully cast the disarming spell, mostly students above the 4th year. Most little wizards merely managed to make their magic wands flicker, and then there was no further movement. Harry was among the successful. A thin red light shot from the tip of his magic wand, hitting his opponent, Hermione. The girl staggered, and then her magic wand fell from her hand. Although it didn't fly high, it still landed on the ground. Harry, you have talent. Picking up her magic wand from the floor, Hermione said excitedly. Really? Harry looked at his palm with disbelief. He thought he would fail, but now, he instinctively turned to look at William in the crowd. Not far away, Cedric's disarming spell hit the boy, but he just yawned. When could he be that strong? Of course, now it's my turn. Hermione pointed her magic wand at the boy. But before the girl could cast the spell, a raspy, deep voice suddenly came into his ear, as if from hell. Where are you? I smell it. I smell the scent of flesh and blood. I will tear you apart. I will kill you. The voice came from underground this time. The malevolent voice made Harry uneasy, and he instinctively looked around. Clearly, once again, only he could hear it. What's wrong? Hermione paused her spell, asking in confusion. Shut up. Annoyed, Harry covered his ears, instinctively yelling. As Harry finished speaking, the world finally quieted down. I'm not talking about you, that voice, it. Harry noticed Hermione's dazed expression and hurriedly explained. But before he could finish, he saw the others nearby. Everyone around was looking at him. What's wrong? Harry was a bit confused. Even if he yelled at Hermione to shut up, why would everyone else? Ha Harry, are you a Parseltongue? Nearby, Cormac McLaggen asked incredulously. What's a parcel? Harry instinctively shouted. No, don't say anything, Harry, let's leave here first. Hermione interrupted Harry's inquiry, pulling his arm and quickly passing through the crowd that had begun buzzing again, leaving the hall. But the impact Harry left wasn't over. It radiated outwards from where he stood, and soon almost everyone in the hall knew Harry was a Parseltongue. Everyone started discussing it until Professor McGonagall released 2 fireworks to the ceiling, finally redirecting their attention. Didn't expect Harry Potter to be a Parseltongue, Ernie Macmillan whispered. Is he the great-great-great-grandson of Slytherin? Then why was he sorted into Gryffindor by the Sorting Hat? Perhaps. Cedric wanted to say something, but William interrupted him. Follow me. He grabbed the boy's shoulder and led him quickly towards the exit. Wait, Hermione, what does it mean? In the castle's second-floor corridor, Harry finally couldn't stand the silent atmosphere anymore. He stopped, pulling Hermione to a halt as well. What happened? Why do you all look at me like that? Like I'm a monster. Harry, you're a Parseltongue, don't you know? Hermione turned her head with a voice full of disbelief. What? I'm a what? Parseltongue, you can speak to snakes, right? Yes, and it's not the first time. Harry frowned, instinctively nodding. I even met a Brazilian python that hadn't been to Brazil. It wanted to attack my cousin Dudley because I let it out of the glass cabinet. But it wasn't intentional. I didn't even know I was a wizard then. Well, a Brazilian python that hasn't been to Brazil, Harry, that's awful. Hermione clutched her head, helplessly squatting down. Hey, what's wrong? Can you just tell me directly? Isn't speaking to snakes something at least half the people in the hall can do? It's nothing for a wizard. Harry was getting impatient. No, I can't. I can't do it either. Squeak. What? William. Harry instinctively turned around, only to find two figures behind him, and a cat and mouse. Kabuta says it can't do it either. William bent down carefully, avoiding any physical contact with Harry, feeling odd being called, Mum, by a young boy. Harry, you're a Parseltongue. Snake, yes, I can speak to snakes. Harry nodded a bit self-destructively. So, is Potter perhaps related to the Gaunt family? William stroked his chin. Have you checked your family tree? Harry opened his mouth, wanting to say he hadn't even seen his father. Speaking to snakes, historically the most famous wizard with this ability, seeing Harry's puzzled face, William explained, is called Salazar Slytherin. And this ability is hereditary. Do you mean? Yes, Harry, you might be a descendant of Slytherin. Hermione stood up, nodded, this means you might be the heir to the secret chamber. But I am not. Harry's voice trembled. We know you're not, but others. Tell me the details. William interrupted Hermione's comforting, rubbing his chin, having a feeling that he was missing a clue. What? How did you suddenly speak Parseltongue just now? Because. Harry instinctively glanced at Hermione, then said, I heard that voice again, the sound before each attack, it was annoying, and I couldn't hold back, so. What sound? Cedric, who had been listening for a while, instinctively asked. Don't interrupt. Pinching Cedric's mouth, William turned to Hermione, you heard it too. He remembered last night, Hermione told him she and Harry heard it, he thought it was a special power of the protagonist group. Well, no, I didn't hear it. Hermione struggled a bit but eventually admitted the truth. So, after hearing the voice, you instinctively spoke Parseltongue. A look of realization appeared in William's eyes, but he continued, now try saying something in Parseltongue again. Shut up. Harry frowned, attempting to say. That's English. William nodded, good, now it's all clear. What's clear? Hermione was perplexed. This has nothing to do with wizards of your age, you two better hurry back to the common room. William nodded to Cedric, and they both tacitly turned and left simultaneously. Wait. Hermione wanted to stop William, the mystery-talking scoundrel, but just a corner later, she lost sight of him. In the Hufflepuff dormitory. So, what exactly did you understand? After nearly half a year, the interaction between Cedric and William was now much more relaxed. Don't rush. William stood by the wall, a red brick fireplace turned out, he grabbed a handful of flow powder, weren't you curious why I could defeat Snape? Aren't we discussing Harry's Parseltongue now? Follow me, I'll tell you. Hey, listen to me. Room of. Watching William disappear in the flames of flow powder, Cedric took a deep breath, hesitated no more, grabbed some flow powder on the mantel, mimicking William's words, room of. Cough cough. The green flames swallowed the boy, and as the scene before him finally stopped changing, he quickly stepped out of the fireplace. Tweet. With a pop, a yellow diricol suddenly appeared above the boy's head, then burped and disappeared again. Cedric scratched his head in confusion, looking at the somewhat cramped room that, despite being night outside, was still flooded with sunlight from the skylight above. Pots along the wall were filled with various plants, the boy felt they looked familiar as if he'd seen them before. Then Kabuta slinked out of his trousers. Wait, when did it go in? Don't touch anything recklessly, especially the chomping cabbage over there, unless you want to lose a couple of fingers. And the room inside, don't go in, I have a big dog, and Dobby. Dobby is here. A house elf in a child-sized suit appeared in front of the two. You even have a house elf. Cedric's expression of confusion deepened. Take care of this kid, make sure he's protected. I'll be back in a while. William ignored the boy's questions, quickly instructing the elf while stepping into another room around the corner. Leaving just the boy and the elf staring at each other. No, you. Bang. Responding to Cedric was only the tightly shut door. After closing the door, William sat at the desk, grabbed the diary from the nearby pile of books, and laid it open on the desk with his previously jotted nonsensical writings still visible. Silently pondering for a moment, William began to write. Voldemort, the basilisk you released bit and killed more than half of the people in the school, even Dumbledore was bitten to death. Are you satisfied now, you cold-blooded person? I will never forgive you, never. This time, the words on the diary finally slowly disappeared, until after a while, a symbol appeared slowly. When I typed this, it wasn't because I had a question. Sensing the intense emotional fluctuations from the soul within the diary, William contentedly closed it again. Don't you like staying silent? Like pretending to be dumb? Then if I suddenly cut off the chapter here, wouldn't you be outraged? Noticing the diary almost exuded a visible aura of resentment into the air, William nearly couldn't hold back his laughter. Before actually seeing the truth, William couldn't confirm how much of his speculation was accurate, but it didn't stop him from messing with the other side's mindset. The investigation over this period had allowed him to confirm a few things. 1. The diary is absolutely related to the attacks, because it flew out of Weasley's underwear at the time, and Lucius Malfoy also confirmed that the attacks were related to the diary he brought into Hogwarts, and the soul in the diary is connected to Voldemort. I only know you cast magic on it. That was Lucius's original words. 2. The monster in the secret chamber is a basilisk, or, frankly, besides a creature like the basilisk, he couldn't think of any snakes that could kill ghosts, since there seems to be no mythical creature like Medusa in this world. And Harry is a Parseltongue. Normally, Parseltongue is only used when seeing snakes or conversing with them. Of course, except for particularly skilled Parseltongues, this is why he let Harry try again, as he might have extraordinary talent. 100 years ago, he had a friend from the Gaunt family who was a Parseltongue. Speaking of which, Amonis might be Voldemort's ancestor. But he's probably not a direct ancestor since Amonis hated the bloodline within him and the consequences of inbreeding caused him to lose his sight. William believed he would likely never marry or have children. 3. As for why the soul in the diary is definitely Voldemort's, obviously, the answer is right in front of us, Tom M. Riddle, that's the name written on the first page of the diary, although most people view the Dark Lord's true name as taboo, but he captured a werewolf leader. This person didn't hold back when it came to the secrets of the Death Eaters, spoke openly, even revealed that, among the Death Eaters, there was a witch who admired Voldemort so much that she once licked the soles of his feet in front of her husband while Voldemort enjoyed it. Tisk, what a real pervert. Playing too much with the dark arts indeed tends to warp one's mindset. Based on the above points, and some small findings, William could almost confirm that there's currently a snake, probably a basilisk, wandering in the castle, and the culprit behind its release is this diary in his hand. However, if the basilisk had been roaming since Halloween and it has been wandering like this for over a month, it hasn't really killed anyone yet. Honestly, William wondered if some force was secretly protecting the students at Hogwarts. Otherwise, how could such a creature, possessing instant death magic, wander the castle for one whole month before finally petrifying a little wizard and a ghost in the past 2 days? This probability is lower than someone spending 100,000 to buy 50,000 lottery tickets with the same number and winning 220 million. Do you believe him or do you believe I'm a time traveler? Wait, I might actually be a time traveler. After settling the plan, William stuffed the diary into the inner pocket of his wizard robe, turned, and pushed open the door. Then, he saw Cedric and the Niffler, fighting, by the fireplace, while Dobby was trying awkwardly to stop them. Tisk, did he mistake the person? You're back. Dobby wanted to stop. Dobby immediately noticed William's frowning face, hesitantly waving both hands, trying to explain the situation to William. He was dressed in Draco Malfoy's childhood suit, which, although somewhat ill-fitting, made the little house elf look much more spirited than before. After receiving a tie directly from Lucius, Dobby regained the status of freedom. This is actually an insult to normal house elves, but the one from the Malfoy family clearly wasn't normal-minded. During these last 2 weeks of interaction, of course Dobby saw William's experiments that seemed to benefit, or torment, society, but the subject was the werewolf whom Dobby had long branded as a big baddie in his mind. Greyback equals bad guy, William tormenting Greyback, William equals good guy. So the equation held. Mr. Richard is a good person. The previous punishments on Dobby were because it tried to attack Harry Potter, whereas Mr. Richard wanted to protect Harry Potter. He even disregarded past grievances to help Dobby gain freedom. So, under such self-hypnosis, Dobby expressed upon gaining freedom that he wanted to work for William, somewhat timidly stating he wished for 1 canute per week's pay. What could you do with a canute? At the time, the plan was to cast a forgetfulness spell on Dobby and then send it off to Hogwarts, kitchen. William was puzzled, originally taking this little elf to Malfoy Manor to serve as evidence, but who knew it would result in such an awkward NTR development. So he simply asked Lucius to set Dobby free, to avoid constantly banging the cage and causing him a headache. As for giving Dobby back to them, what comes into my hands can't be snatched away by others. No payment is also fine, because Dobby is now a free elf, thanks to Mr. Richard, so you're now my benefactor. Dobby clearly misunderstood William's meaning and quickly waved his hands. No, how about 1 sickle per week? You pick it out yourself from Kabuto's stomach. William waved his hand, halting Dobby's praise. As for the job, help me look after those nifflers, diricals, moon-enchanted beasts, and those chomping cabbages, ask if there's anything you don't understand. After settling Dobby's duties, William went to the Great Hall. Back to the current moment. What are you doing? Watching Cedric, who struggled equally with the niffler, even seemed to be at a slight disadvantage, William curiously asked. It stole the ring that Cho gave me. Grabbing the Kabuto slapping randomly on his face, Cedric seized the opportunity to hold her 2 hind legs, then began to shake her vigorously. A pile of glittering bits and pieces fell out with each shake. A token of love. Well, sort of. So, what exactly is this place? Picking up the ring that had fallen on the carpet, Cedric clumsily changed the subject. The Room of Requirement, also known as the Come and Go Room, think of it as a secret chamber in Hogwarts Castle. It usually only appears when someone truly needs it, and its space depends on your needs, for example. William snapped his fingers, and then the sky quickly darkened, and bright moonlight streamed through the window pane. Oh. Cedric looked out at the changed scenery, full of surprise. These are the plants I grew. William pointed to a whole row of potted plants on the shelf by the window. I know, you stole them all from the Hogwarts greenhouse. Cedric blurted out. No wonder Professor Sprout was muttering about thieves in the greenhouse a while ago. The boy's voice grew weaker. Okay, borrowed. Yeah, a wizard's business, how can it be called stealing? Don't tell Professor Sprout. Got it. Ahem. Behind that door is a garden, with some of my more tame little animals. Did you also borrow them from the Forbidden Forest? More or less. After giving Cedric a rough introduction to the Room of Requirement, William steered the conversation back on track. Now, are you sure you want the ability to defeat Snape? William asked seriously. Of course. Cedric replied without hesitation. Do you want to stand out and become Hogwarts duel champion? Of course. Do you want to defeat every black wizard in the world, even Voldemort? Of course. So, it seems you are ready to resolve then. Resolve for what? That's good. Wait, resolve for what? William smiled, waved his magic wand, and a dozen books flew down from the tall bookshelf reaching the ceiling. Before Cedric could react, a pile of heavy books lay before him. The first few seemed normal, standard spells, level 1 to level 6, advanced runic translation, advanced transfiguration guide, mostly textbooks accessible to upper year students, but things got weirder further on. Deadly poison magic, curse and counter curse, advanced black magic decryption. Did you empty the forbidden book area? These are for you to finish within half a month and then give me a 14-inch essay. William didn't answer the boy but continued. Also, each book corresponds to 3 test papers, 2.5 every day, just in time for before Christmas. Saying this, he took out a stack of test papers. Is it too late to regret now? Regret what? There's only a mere 532 days until your OWL exams. Are you going to cry in the exam room then? But the exam can't possibly include these, right? Cedric pointed to the hefty volumes whose titles alone indicated their content, aware that these dark arts were certainly not part of the examination scope. Know your enemy and yourself, and you can fight 100 battles without defeat. Only with rich theoretical knowledge can you know what those black wizards know, so you can defeat them. I suddenly don't want to. Dobby, supervise him doing his homework until I return, William commanded in a tone that brooked no argument, and before Cedric could react, he turned and swiftly left the room of requirement through the big door. Are you called Dobby? After a brief silence, the boy looked at the little elf beside him. Yes, Mr. Diggory. Dobby seemed to have anticipated what the boy was about to say and quickly said, Dobby will definitely carry out Mr. Richards' task loyally, so please, Mr. Diggory, don't make it difficult for Dobby. It raised a hand, and magic light flickered at its fingertips. Chirp chirp. Kabuta, having regained its senses, climbed onto the table, looking gleeful. Cedric took a deep breath, looking at the pile of books on the table. In the end, he reluctantly picked up the slightly old, Advanced Transfiguration Guide, but when he saw the densely written red pen annotations on the book, his eyes slightly paused. He seemed to understand what William intended for him to do. Hogwarts Castle, 8th floor. In front of an ugly gargoyle, William crouched down and petted Mrs. Loris's cat head, stuffing a fish snack into it. Okay, here it is, thanks, you go play now. Meow Tilda, Mrs. Loris nodded happily and then turned to leave. Pineapple jam, William said softly, looking at the gargoyle. The gargoyle remained motionless. Looks like the password has changed, William nodded, pulling out a piece of paper from his pocket. Chocolate frog, cockroach cluster, Drooble's best blowing gum, fizzing whizbees, licorice wand, sugar quill. Lemon sherbet. Boom. After quickly reciting over 10 names of sweets, the gargoyle finally recognized the correct password, jumping aside to reveal the spiral staircase behind it. As expected, all of Dumbledore's passwords are sweets. Putting Honeyduke's shopping list back into his pocket, William had to admit that these rumors circulating among little wizards sometimes did bear some truth. William stepped onto the first step of the staircase, and with a slight tremor, his figure began to rotate and rise until it stopped in front of a wooden door. Gentle arguing sounds came from behind the wooden door, but they quickly disappeared. The people inside were evidently aware that someone was outside. Come in. A moment later, Dumbledore's voice came from behind the door. The next moment, the door opened, and William walked into the headmaster's office, the scene here almost unchanged from his last visit. The portraits of former headmasters, the worn sorting hat, the warm yellow lights, and Severus Snape. Good evening, Professor. Looking at the man sitting across from Dumbledore's desk, William greeted. Snape clearly had no intention of interacting with William. Upon hearing the boy greet him, he immediately stood up, stepped back a few paces, then directed his gaze towards the bookshelf in the office, expressing his disdain for William through his actions. So, I came at a bad time. William took Snape's original seat and the once wooden chair instantly turned into a blue velvet high-backed chair. Very skillful transfiguration, Dumbledore nodded. Professor Snape and I were just having some academic discussions, so, for you to visit the headmaster's office this late. It was indeed late at night, as Dumbledore was already dressed in blue and purple starry patterned pajamas. Oh, about the construction of Hogwarts School, I have an idea. William glanced at Snape, his eyes clearly indicating, can idle persons be dismissed? School construction. Dumbledore paused for a moment, evidently not expecting William to break school rules in the middle of the night and barge into the headmaster's office just to discuss such a serious topic. Professor Snape is also a professor at Hogwarts, so I think he can attend. All right, then I'll just say it. By all means, as long as it's a reasonable idea. I want to open a chicken farm in the castle. There's a passageway leading straight from the Hufflepuff common room to the 8th floor. In the now normal-looking Great Hall, Hermione approached Harry, who was just about to start eating. What do you mean? Harry, who was spreading fermented tofu on a slice of bread, looked a bit bewildered. He had suddenly discovered a new jam on the table today. Perhaps it was a new flavor. Although it smelled a bit strange, wasn't being a Gryffindor all about being brave and trying new things? Come with me. Hermione appeared quite anxious. She glanced at the whispering crowd around them, then grabbed Harry's bread slice from him, threw it onto his plate, and pulled the boy by the arm out of the Great Hall. Wait, I haven't even taken a bite. Harry struggled to retrieve his bread but was a hand's length away from reaching it. Where are they off to? Watching the two disappear at the door, Fred Weasley sidled up to Harry's spot, picked up the boy's discarded bread slice. Wasting food isn't a good habit. Those two lovebirds, ahem, mind your own business. Hasn't Granger returned that thing to you? George looked over at Ginny and quickly cut himself off, starting to load apple pie onto his plate. What thing? Ginny leaned in, curiously asking. It's adult business, kids shouldn't. Fred took a bite of the bread, and after a moment of chewing, his expression became stiff. What's up? George asked in confusion, looking up. Nothing. Fred took a pause, then offered the bread in his hand to his twin brother as if nothing was wrong. It's really good, you should try. No way. As twins who had lived together for 14 years, they knew each other's tricks inside out. Naturally, George detected Fred's anomaly. He shook his head in rejection and attempted to escape, but it was too late. You're eating it today, whether you want or not. Hermione, can't whatever this is wait until we finish eating. Harry looked resigned as Hermione continued to drag him to a corner of the entrance hall where they finally stopped. I watched it all night. Hermione interrupted Harry's complaints. Her dark circles indicated she hadn't slept. The girl pulled a piece of parchment from her pocket, unfolding it with secrecy. Watched what? Your magic history essay. Harry was a bit baffled, not understanding why one would be so secretive about a blank parchment. If you've finished, could I, borrow it? I mean, for reference. What essay? That's not what I'm talking about. You haven't written it either. Shut up. Hermione lifted a hand to clamp shut Harry's mouth, then pressed her magic wand against the parchment. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. Ligands and such. Oh. Harry broke free from Hermione's grasp, and with a look of shock, took the parchment. Suddenly, a map of Hogwarts Castle appeared abruptly on the once empty parchment, with countless black dots wandering about. This is the Marauder's map. Each of these black dots represents a little wizard, a professor, or a ghost. Hermione nodded, introducing it to Harry. I only found Ginny the other day because of this. It was lent to me by Fred. So, last night you. Harry seemed to understand something. Yes, I was watching the map, looking for William and that Diggory for a long time. Hermione continued. After we separated from them, they returned directly to the Hufflepuff common room, then disappeared off the map. But, you can see the Hufflepuff common room here. Harry pointed to the lower right corner of the map, indicating a structure resembling a basement. Right, I hadn't finished. Hermione nodded. Then, after about half an hour, William appeared alone in the 8th floor corridor of the castle. So I say, there must be a passageway directly leading to the 8th floor from the Hufflepuff common room. What's that supposed to mean? It means they know of a secret passage or chamber not recorded on the Marauder's map and stayed there for nearly half an hour. A secret chamber. You're suspecting? No, it's impossible. Mr. Richard can't be the heir, he's a Hufflepuff after all. Harry instinctively wanted to refute, not knowing why. Even though he couldn't find any suspicious points, he didn't want to acknowledge William could be the heir. Yeah, if not him, then it must be you. Wah. What? No, Hermione, you know full well. But you are a Parseltongue speaker, and almost everyone is suspicious of you now. A Parseltongue speaker is a symbol of Slytherin, even if the Sorting Hat placed you in Gryffindor house. Hermione nearly uttered the words Black Wizard. But Harry fell silent. Yes, nobody knew, only he did, that during the sorting ceremony, the Sorting Hat did not give him Gryffindor as his first choice. Have you made up your mind? You know Slytherin can help you achieve greatness, there's no doubt about that. The Sorting Hat's sharp voice seemed to still echo in the boy's ears. Cluck, cluck. No, it could also be Malfoy. You have no evidence, Harry. No, maybe I can get some, as long as I keep an eye on this map. Harry seemed to grasp new hope. Looking eagerly at the Marauder's map in his hands, Malfoy will slip up eventually. Cluck cluck. Soon, Harry found the dot representing Malfoy, who was still in the Slytherin dormitory and appeared not to have woken up. No surprise, it was the weekend, and he had gotten up early today because he planned to go see Hagrid. Harry pointed at the lower black dot outside the castle's gate on the map, and both of them raised their heads to look at the entrance to the Great Hall. When the thick wooden door was pushed open from the outside, a wave of noisy sounds rushed into everyone's ears. Cluck, cluck, cluck cluck, cluck cluck cluck. Oh, Merlin's nappies, you can't go there. Come back. A giant covered in chicken feathers squeezed in through the wooden door from outside, holding a handful of cotton twine in his hand, and each end was tied to a lively rooster. The chicken feathers, carrying a pungent odor, fluttered around the entrance hall, seemingly startled by something. The flock of roosters squawked loudly while flapping their wings incessantly. Hagrid. Harry raised his hand to catch a rooster flying towards his head. Oh, it's you guys. Hagrid, who was busy taking the loop off the rooster's head, responded reflexively. It took several glances around the hall before he finally spotted Harry and Hermione, who were buried in the chicken feathers. What's going on here? Looking at Hagrid wrapping the rope around his arm, Hermione asked, somewhat confused. It's the headmaster's order. He wants to keep some roosters in the castle. Hagrid mumbled uncertainly. Although his voice wasn't loud, Harry still managed to make out most of it amidst the crowing of the roosters. Dumbledore wants to, wait, he wants to keep chickens. And inside the castle. Harry gaped, momentarily at a loss for words. I thought you were going to send them to the kitchen. Ah, of course not, this is already the third batch. Professor McGonagall contacted a Muggle chicken farm, and they said there are 300 more today. Hagrid sighed as he finished tying the rope. Luckily, Filch isn't awake yet, or he'd fight me to the death if he saw this. Harry looked around the hall, which was feather-filled within 2 minutes, and nodded in agreement. Filch always hated little wizards who disregarded the cleanliness of the castle. Once, when Harry brought some mud after training, he was nearly locked in a cupboard and subjected to Filch's inhuman punishment. If Filch saw this scene now. All right, I have to take them up to the 4th floor, Hagrid said as he carried the roosters up the stairs, waving at them, and briskly headed upwards under the strange gazes of a group of little wizards. Watching Hagrid vanish up the stairs, clucking away, both Harry and Hermione fell into a long silence. What do you think Dumbledore is up to? Finally, Harry's somewhat bewildered voice broke the silence. Keeping chickens in the castle, is that really something the headmaster of Hogwarts would do? Well, actually, only the headmaster would have the authority to do something like that. I don't know. Hermione, too, rarely looked confused. She busied herself with removing feathers stuck in her hair, and her frizzy hair added to her troubles. Where were we again? Malfoy. And William, he's definitely not simple. A 5th-year transfer student who managed to beat Snape. Maybe it's just because the old bat is a lousy, Alright, William does seem suspicious, but. Which is why we need to keep an eye on them, in turns, using the Marauder's map. Hermione grabbed the map from Harry's hands. Just put them here, sir. The house elf in a small tailored suit waved at the giant who just climbed the stairs, speaking in a squeaky voice. There's no rooster in the classroom on the 4th floor yet. Mr. Dumbledore said to leave them here, sir. It repeated the instruction. All right, but who are you? Hagrid asked, puzzled. Although the house elves in the castle were treated well compared to others, none well enough to afford small suits, I don't think I've seen you at Hogwarts. Yes, sir, I'm Dobby. Dobby nodded, its pointy ears flopping behind its head. Dobby is now working for Rick. I mean, Hogwarts, and can earn a sickle every week. It boasted. Payment. That's odd. Hagrid untied the loop from a rooster and tossed it into the empty classroom behind Dobby, silencing the noisy crowing. I haven't known a house elf to ask for payment. But Dobby is free. Alright, a free house elf is not weirder than keeping chickens in the castle. Hagrid mumbled indifferently, watching Dobby snap its fingers and vanish. Hagrid. I'm here, it's you. Hagrid turned around, noticing the boy standing behind him. He scratched his nose. William. Oh, William Richard, I remember you. Yes, glad you still remember me. William nodded, and Kabuta on his shoulder waved a paw at Hagrid. Is there something you need? It's about the attack 50 years ago. William got straight to the point. What attack 50 years ago? I don't know. Hagrid immediately reacted defensively, shaking his head vigorously. Headmaster Dumbledore sent me. William, anticipating this, interrupted the agitated giant. Even if it's Dumbledore, Dumbledore sent you. Hagrid blinked, muttered a few times. What did he want you to ask? I've told him everything. He promised me. Speaking, feeling betrayed, Hagrid's emotions flared up again. Calm down, calm down. William sighed. His eyes glowed blue, soothing the other with the power of emotions. He didn't want to open Hagrid's old wounds either, but he guessed the old man Dumbledore got addicted to playing the Riddler. No matter what William said, he asked him to talk to Hagrid. Only through direct dialogue can you hear one's inner voice. Bah, the old mystic. Last night, after William explained about the diary, Dumbledore immediately agreed to the idea of keeping chickens in the castle. Yes, that's William's plan, tell the teacher. Catching a basilisk in the castle wasn't hard for him, but Hogwarts' intricate sewer system was a huge obstacle. He couldn't be sure a student wouldn't be killed before he could catch the basilisk. The only reason Hogwarts remained open was because the attacked wizards were merely petrified, yet the basilisk's gaze could kill. One couldn't keep relying on sheer luck from above, right? Besides, it wouldn't do William any good if Hogwarts closed down. So, the best option was to keep chickens. The crowing of roosters is deadly to basilisks, so ideally, the rooster's cries would kill the basilisk outright. But even if the basilisk was gifted, it would at least be weakened by the crowing and unable to roam freely in the castle. And by summer vacation, when all students leave, it might as well just wait to die. However, after accepting William's plan, Dumbledore took away Voldemort's diary. Who knows what the old man planned to do with it? The robust ancient trees propped up a lush green canopy, with pale sunlight filtering through the dense leaves, leaving mottled shadows on the soil of the Forbidden Forest as a result of the Tyndall effect. Woof woof woof. Squeak. Hagrid's hunting dog, Fang, darted swiftly through the thick roots of the Forbidden Forest, its long tongue dangling behind its ears, with a niffler sitting steadily on its head. Kabuto was struggling to stuff a shiny silver tag into its belly, which seemed to be a dog tag Hagrid made for Fang. Hey, William, you better stay close to me. It's dangerous here. They won't attack because they recognize me, so don't stray too far, Hagrid shouted loudly as he watched the boy walking toward the lake, holding an absurdly large crossbow in his hand, though only by human standards. Meaning. William bent down and stuffed a few bright yellow leeches into his pocket, even though they were not scarce in the room of requirement now. Scraping had become a habit for him. Fortunately, he generally carried pockets with the traceless extension charm applied. Well, the creatures in the Forbidden Forest. You know, I have a good relationship with the centaur tribe, wolves, and them. Hagrid realized his slip of the tongue, coughed twice, and tried to divert the topic. Logically, this area should be their territory, how come recently? The werewolf clan. Isn't that a rumor? William chuckled. Don't hide it, Hagrid. I've followed you here, who can possibly live so deep in the Forbidden Forest? Or perhaps, what we're looking for isn't human. Even though he pulled Dumbledore's name while in the castle, Hagrid stubbornly insisted he knew nothing about the monsters in the secret chamber. Until William pressed him repeatedly, Hagrid reluctantly admitted he knew someone who might know. Beyond that, he wasn't planning to reveal more, instead leading William all the way into the Forbidden Forest. Initially, Hagrid planned to have William wait at the hut while he went to ask this person, but clearly, William wasn't agreeable. If he were willing to tell you, you wouldn't have been kept in the dark for the last 50 years. But, besides, Dumbledore wants to know. Indeed, Dumbledore was a trump card for negotiating with Rubeus Hagrid. Regardless of how resistant the other party was, if you mentioned the old headmaster, he would likely, after some hesitation, choose to comply. Even though he hadn't actually confirmed with Dumbledore. Woof, woof. Before Hagrid could retort, an urgent barking interrupted their conversation. Fang. Upon hearing the sound, Hagrid instinctively turned around, striding toward the source of the sound but not forgetting to call back to William. Quick, stay by me, don't fall too far behind. The giant took large strides, with William's stride being about a third of Hagrid's. Yet he quickly caught up with the latter. The two of them found Fang barking wildly. The big black dog was clawing at a sturdy trunk, barking fiercely at the canopy above, while the niffler sat on its head, clutching a pair of small golden bells it had stolen, from somewhere, shaking them energetically. Strange. Hagrid looked puzzled at the canopy, then lowered his gaze to his hound. As its owner, he knew Fang's temperament well. Even when with him, Fang rarely behaved so brashly in a place like the Forbidden Forest. What's above? William tilted his head back, and the dark green canopy looked impenetrable. I don't kn. Woof woof. Just as Hagrid was about to shake his head, Fang, which had only just quieted down upon seeing the two arrive, barked twice more. Kabuta, sitting on its head, also stood up, its two pink paws gesturing emphatically. A spider. William nodded, noticing the fresh marks on the trunk, indicating the spider was quite large. Hearing the word, Hagrid seemed hesitant to speak. He remained silent for a moment, was just about to say something, but upon looking down at William, his expression suddenly turned to sheer panic as he instinctively raised the giant crossbow in his hand. Whoosh! With an arrow slicing through the air, a colossal spider nearly the size of a horse was pinned to the ground. Oh! William, at that moment, belatedly turned his head, the light in his eyes dimming. He quickly walked forward, observing the hideous creature that, after a brief struggle, was now utterly lifeless, then pulled a bottle from his pocket. A pint, 1 imperial pint equals 568.26 milliliters, of Acromantula venom could be worth about 100 galleons. Though he didn't lack the stuff, wastage was a shame. This is what I was telling you about, Dan. Ah, what are you doing? Hagrid shook his head, sighing, but was noticeably taken aback upon seeing William's actions. Nothing, go on. William shook his head and pocketed the bottle in satisfaction. All right then. Hagrid found William's behavior on the way here odd, as if they weren't in the dangerous forbidden forest but casually strolling in the garden. But, they recognize me, they shouldn't attack outright, not sure what's going on with them lately. Ah, I might know. William rubbed his nose. So, who exactly are we looking for in this backwater place? Acromantula may have a taste for human flesh, but it's not like there are many people wandering in the forbidden forest, and birds are part of their diet. Fine, I'm not sure how much Dumbledore told you, but Aragog really can't be the culprit. It was only the size of a chihuahua at the time. I kept it in the castle basement, how could it have attacked anyone? Hagrid earnestly said. Wait, Aragog. What on earth is that? Ah, a very friendly little spider. Hagrid stressed thrice. Besides, it knows what the monster in the castle is, even though it's always unwilling to tell me. But, isn't it illegal to keep acromantulas? William's gaze was puzzled. Not to mention, mate, you're raising man-eating spiders in the castle. No wonder Dumbledore tolerated me keeping a few chickens in the corridor. This isn't so unreasonable, is it? But it's really very friendly. William paused for a moment, no longer focusing on a debate over a spider's friendliness. Alright, if we're here to find it, lead the way. Okay then, just make sure you stay by my side. They won't attack me, Hagrid said, though his confidence wavered as he looked at the pinned, lifeless vicious spider. They shouldn't, anyway, he added. Under Hagrid's lead, two people and a dog walked into a forest that was noticeably more sinister. Heavy spider webs hung from the treetops, forming large cocoons of various shapes dangling from the tree trunks. Beneath the giant banyan tree lay a sunken clearing. The leaf-covered hollow was empty, but the rustling sounds around told them that they were not alone. Argo! Argo! Hagrid waded through the already decaying leaves to the center of the hollow, holding his crossbow, and called out loudly. After a shake of the leaves, from the thick spider webs above the hollow, emerged the head of a gigantic gray-black spider. Each of its eyes, on a head with ugly, massive pincers, was covered with a layer of white haze. It was blind. Hagrid. Its giant pincers rubbed quickly. Yes, it's me, Argo, I've come to find you. Hagrid appeared somewhat happy, waving his hand even though the spider couldn't see at all. Oh, long time no see, Hagrid. It's been uneasy in the Forbidden Forest lately. Argo's voice also had a hint of joy. It moved its elephant-sized body out of the hole, lying on the spider web closest to Hagrid. What brings you here? Ah, yes, uneasy. Hagrid appeared puzzled, clearly not understanding what the other meant, but he didn't forget his task this time. Right, Argo, do you still remember? Remember what? The reason I was expelled from Hogwarts. Oh, of course, I remember. Argo excitedly rubbed its massive pincers. Those people said I was the culprit. They even kicked you out of the castle. But I did nothing. It was clearly that monster. It was the monster that killed that witch. Yes, that's the monster. It has appeared again and attacked several people. Really? Yes, so you must tell me. No, impossible, Hagrid, I told you, I cannot say the name of that monster. Come on, other spiders have many eyes and don't mind much. But you're blind, yet still afraid of the basilisk. William couldn't hold back any longer from interrupting this tender moment between the giant and spider. He stared at the spider's head with those 4 pairs of milky eyes, speechless. How dare you? Wait, who are you? Argo seemed extremely agitated, its massive body retreating reflexively to the entrance of its hole, its 8 thick legs trembling incessantly. He's William, Argo, he's my friend. Hagrid hastily placated. William. Who is Will? No, how do you know that monster? Argo was incredibly anxious, retreating back into the hole, leaving only half of its head exposed, cautiously scanning its surroundings, even though it couldn't see anything. It was a guess, but seeing your reaction, I'm sure I guessed right. William rubbed his chin, surveying this spider. So big, so old. Would its venom be more valuable? Isn't it said that the older the more aromatic it is? No, yes, but. Hagrid, now that you know, you should leave. Argo was momentarily incoherent, but quickly calmed down, speaking in a deep voice. No, he cannot leave. A voice, difficult to discern, came from another direction, and William looked up. At some point, the clearing's surroundings had filled with a bunch of golden galleons. No, a bunch of acromantulas, one of which was almost the same size as Argo, its front pincers rubbing. It stepped forward 2 steps. You cannot let them leave, Argo. What do you mean, Poke? Hagrid is my friend. Feeling his authority challenged, Argo appeared somewhat angry. But that boy, he killed our companion. Poke continued. No, it was me. I killed a spider with the crossbow on the way here, Argo, Hagrid shouted loudly, but it was trying to attack us, you need to keep them in check. No, Hagrid, this has nothing to do with you. Argo sharply reprimanded, raising its head. Are you sure, Poke? I am absolutely sure, he is the wizard who has been slaughtering us in the Forbidden Forest lately. Hagrid looked bewilderedly at William, apparently not quite understanding what the spider meant. Ahem, to be honest, I didn't know these golden galleons were yours. William shrugged helplessly. These spiders had pretty good eyesight. Those 8 eyes weren't for nothing. All right, Hagrid, you can leave. Bring your dog. Argo paused. This person named William must pay for his actions. The friction of the spider pincers around the hollow grew noisier. No, there must be some misunderstanding. William is just a new little wizard. Hagrid raised his crossbow, warily eyeing the dozen spiders that had already started approaching from all sides. Let us leave, Argo. Fang had also lost its courage from before. While it still stood in front of William, its trembling hind legs revealed its fear. No, Hagrid. Argo seemed to sigh. Try not to harm Hagrid. No, Argo, you cannot. But Hagrid's call received no response. Argo had already retracted back into its hole. All right, William. I'll try to get you out. Watching the surrounding spiders rubbing their legs and pincers, Hagrid sighed, guilt in his voice, I shouldn't have brought you here today. But William didn't respond, he simply pulled out his magic wand, then, incendio. A crimson wall of fire appeared 3 meters around them and quickly expanded outward, engulfing the whole hollow in the blink of an eye. The sizzling sound of the flames roasting shells echoed, and the dozen spiders that launched the attack almost instantly lost all signs of life. All right, what were you just saying? Having done all that, William turned back to look at Hagrid. Smelling the scent of roasted meat lingering on his nose, the giant's expression was filled with bewilderment. How dare you? Up above the hollow, Poke waved its massive pincers in fury. Sectum Sempra. The magic wand moved again, and the next moment, Poke's body fell to the ground, but its 8 legs remained firmly planted in place. Terrified rustling sounds arose around, and the spiders standing around the hollow looked on in terror at the struggling Poke on the ground. At this moment, the primal instinct of wild animals to avoid harm surged, and they almost reflexively began to scatter to the surroundings. Petrificus totalis. Okay. Looking at the group of golden galleons immobilized by his spell, William contentedly clapped his hands. Poke. From the nest above the hollow came Argo's somewhat bewildered voice. What exactly is this? Looking at the acromantulas frozen in their fleeing positions in all directions, Hagrid, who had just dragged Fang up from the hollow, felt a loss for words. 2, 4, 6, 8. We're rich. William reached into his wizard robe and soon pulled out a patched deep brown cloth bag. He casually dusted it off and then opened the bag. An invisible force came from the bag's opening, and after a special effect worth 50 cents, all the acromantulas in the woodland were sucked inside. Even those 8 giant spider legs, in the future, they could be sent to the kitchen for processing to see if they're edible. If not, they could still be used to feed dogs. Poke, poke, answer me. In the spider nest above the hollow, Argo was still shouting loudly, squinting his clouded eyes with all his might. And the only spider head William left behind was shivering its massive fangs. Then an unclear voice rang out, "F.A. Father. Poke. Are you still alive?" Argo locked onto the direction of the voice and turned his head. What's up with the human now? Did you kill that damned human? Though he detected something odd about Poke's tone, and the brief noises earlier in the woodland didn't sound like a victory, he still asked a bit stubbornly. "FAI. Poke trembled and fell silent. Its condition doesn't look very good." Hagrid slung the giant crossbow onto his back, still reeling from shock. He held no special affection for these regular acromantulas. After all, Argo was the only spider he had raised since hatching. That kind of bond is incomparable, much like the little fire dragon sent to Romania last year. Yet, these creatures he saw as incredibly cute, friendly, and dear individual were enough to scare half the little wizards in the castle to tears. The other half wet their pants from fright. Damn you, you cruel human. We were doing just fine in the Forbidden Forest, why do you? Argo angrily climbed down from the web, hurling accusations at the air beside Hagrid, his 8 thick formidable spider legs restlessly pacing. Argo, calm down. Hagrid seemed a bit frightened, though he wasn't sure whether he was scared of William being attacked by Argo, or... Well, in any case, he wasn't keen on losing this pet which had been free range for nearly 50 years. I'm over here. William put the stuffed cloth bag back into his robe, waving to guide the blind old spider. Speak. Why did you have to? Argo demanded furiously. Simply put, you're valuable. William rolled his eyes, an old spider trying to play the moral binding card. Argo was left speechless, his big fangs quivering in bewilderment. All right, enough idle chatter. Wait, William. Seeing William raise his magic wand, Hagrid quickly stepped forward to shield Argo. Don't do it. It's just a harmless little spider. It's never harmed humans before. I beg you, please spare it. William didn't speak, instead pointing his wand aside. Snap. A skull wrapped in cobwebs rolled onto the ground, perhaps belonging to some poacher. Hagrid scratched his beard, looking somewhat at a loss. I mean. Don't worry, I don't plan to kill it. William gestured for Hagrid to step aside, figuring this old thing didn't have many years left anyway. No need to cause a rift with Hagrid over a bit of venom, especially since his bag was already filled with, spiders. You don't intend to. Hagrid eyed the magic wand in William's hand, clearly still doubting. In the end, he anxiously asked, then what are you planning to do? A bit of harmless modification. William paused, lightly flicking his wand as a deep blue charm flowed from the tip and circled around Hagrid, striking Argo on the head. What did you do? Argo wobbled blankly, but the next moment, his body, once the size of a small elephant, rapidly shrank until he was beneath William's recently raised boot. Hiss. Just as William was about to deliver a stomp, he halted his movement. Yeah, he'd grown rather accustomed to squashing those spiny-backed orbweavers daily, almost sending Argo along to meet his son due to a quick combo. This is. It was unclear how many times Hagrid had been shocked today, his mustache slightly trembling as he looked at the small spider held by William. See, harmless modification. William casually tossed the now palm-sized and dizzy Argo over. Hagrid, somewhat excited, caught the fiercely flailing spider, carefully placing the little guy nearly as big as half his palm in his hand. How did you do this? Looking at Argo, whose size had been reduced and now truly appeared somewhat cute, Hagrid still found it unbelievable. Simple transfiguration technique, utilizing knowledge from 3rd year. Noting the thrilled half-blood giant, William remarked, though it's smaller, because the acromantula's venom can still be lethal, I took the liberty of removing its fangs. Argo. This will keep it from speaking, but there mustn't be any risks. William eyed Hagrid. You need to watch over it, and if you notice signs of it growing, come find me, I'll renew the buff, probably every 2 weeks. Hagrid naturally had no objections, eagerly nodding. Just being able to take Argo back to the wooden cabin was already beyond his expectations. Not being able to speak, well, he could teach it to write, couldn't he? With 8 legs to hold a pen, surely it wouldn't be a problem. And these spiders. William patted his pocket. Though Dumbledore agreed to farm chickens, raising a bunch of man-eating spiders in the castle, even if he was sure they wouldn't harm anyone, wouldn't sit well with the old man if he were to find out. Especially after visiting the headmaster's office last night, he felt like that Riddler head might have caught wind of something, but he checked with Professor Gerard, who often hung around the headmaster's office, but hadn't noticed anything unusual. Perhaps the hat leaked some secrets, or it was something else entirely. However, William wasn't too concerned with whether his identity had been compromised anymore, since initial secrecy upon enrollment was due to uncertainties about the current headmaster's character, especially knowing there was a chubby secret vault buried underground enough to blow up the entire magic realm. If this headmaster was someone even worse than Phineas Black, he didn't want to end up clashing with the headmaster at the onset of his studies, then dealing with headaches over the secret vault's location. But based on his observations so far, coupled with Professor Gerard's assessment, Dumbledore, despite his half-speaking habits, Riddler antics, deaf and blind faculty choices, and disregard for doctor's orders with his constant candy consumption, was overall a good person, responsible towards students and continuously thwarted 2 would-be world-dominating black wizards. Honestly, William himself wanted to find an occasion to face off against the old man, to see if he truly lived up to the rumors. "They're all yours, I won't tell anyone," Hagrid said urgently, then added, "Not even Dumbledore." "Let's keep it that way then." William nodded in satisfaction, not truly expecting if questioned, Hagrid could keep a secret, yet why would Dumbledore even bother asking about this? Surely the basilisk was keeping him busy enough. The end of December in the Scottish Highlands was a vast expanse of white. William sat up from the bed in the room of requirement, gazing at the snowy scene outside the window. Fitting for the season, he synchronized the weather outside the room of requirement with that of the outside world, heavy snowflakes rustling down and obscuring most of the view. The crackling flames in the fireplace danced and provided a comforting sound. NNN. Kabuta, nestled on the small bed on the bedside table, poked its pink mouth out of the covers, clearly wanting to remain in bed a while longer. So William reached out and pinched its nostrils. Chirp chirp. The indignant Niffler flung off the covers and waved its arms accusingly at William. "No work, no school, and you still don't want to get out of bed during the day." William emerged from the covers, grabbing Kabuta in his hand. "Where did you go fooling around again last night?" NNN. "Luna and Ginny sent you Christmas gifts." NNN. "Hand them over." What do you mean by bullying? I'm just helping you keep them safe until you go to college and need to pay tuition. In the end, William let the Niffler off the hook. It had worked hard to receive a gift, and since it wasn't stolen, confiscating it would be unreasonable. Stuffing Kabuta back into its bed, William stood up. The soft carpet on the floor was borrowed from the Malfoy family, as were some of the furniture, and even the little elf. "Good morning, sir." Dobby stood at the bedroom door, holding a tray. Recently, besides going to class, William rarely left the room of requirement, even having meals brought from the kitchen by Dobby, the reason being. Hibernation seemed tempting in the cold weather, but more so was, the downside of indoor chicken raising had surfaced. In December, the corridors of Hogwarts reeked of chicken droppings. Due to the basilisk, no one, except for the uninformed little wizard, opposed Dumbledore's decision. But to ensure the rooster's crow could weaken the basilisk, they had to be free-range. Thousands of chickens roamed freely around Hogwarts. And since the only custodian in the entire castle who cared about cleanliness was napping in the infirmary. Though occasionally upper-year little wizards or professors would maintain, being straightforward birds, chickens paid no heed when it came to leaving droppings, and their waste quickly filled most of the corridors, with many little wizards opting for the bubble head charm to avoid suffering. But the younger little wizards could only manage to hold their noses. "Oh, good morning, Merry Christmas." Yawning, William pulled his wandering thoughts back, waving his hand to summon a blue gift box from the pile under the Christmas tree, which landed in Dobby's hand. Kabuta had just reminded him that today was Christmas. This Christmas tree was brought by Cedric before the holiday. Christmas needs some ambiance here. Then he boarded the train home. Oh, thank you, sir, Dobby gasped, a little incoherent, eagerly unwrapping it to reveal a light gray soft hat. As it was merely a work-for-hire relationship, William didn't need to worry about the consequences of gifting clothes to an elf. It matches your new outfit well. William nodded, noticing that Dobby would buy new clothes whenever he received wages. When giving a gift, either don't give it or make sure to give something that touches the other person's heart. For example, the shampoo he sent Snape, deliberately avoiding giving one to Potter's family. Yes, sir, thank you so much, Dobby squeaked, placing the hat on its head, looking at its reflection in the mirror beside it, almost shedding tears of joy. Oh, sir, I've brought the gifts from your dormitory here. It pointed to the significant increase of gifts under the Christmas tree compared to yesterday. All right, you go ahead. William nodded, pulling out a chair to sit by the table, arranging the tray in front of him. Oh, sir, I was wondering if I could give Harry Potter a Christmas gift. Dobby whispered, since William had once asked it to stay away from Harry, as this fellow not only injured the boy's arm but almost drowned him in the Black Lake, and led him to receive a warning letter from the Ministry of Magic during the summer. Well, let's just say, Harry is somewhat a hot-blooded teenager and Dobby is clearly not good at keeping things to itself. Fine, but don't sign your name. William thought for a moment, nodding. Of course. Dobby eagerly nodded. You enjoy your meal, sir. I won't disturb you, I'm off. With that, the little elf vanished. William slowly finished the custom-made fried dough sticks and soy milk from the kitchen and then sat down next to the Christmas tree. Chirp. Kabuta, barely awake, climbed onto his lap as well. Let me see. William opened one gift after another from the pile. Chomping cabbage seeds from Professor Sprout, syrup toffee from Hagrid, which was so hard that Kabuta, who tried a sneaky bite, yelped in pain. Cedric's gift was a book titled, Me and Quidditch, clearly still not giving up. Luna sent a stack of the Quibbler, and William suspected these were just the ones she had read and discarded. Ginny also gave a book, Magical Me. Can I just remove Lockhart's big face from the cover? He suspected Ginny just wanted to get rid of it. Dumbledore sent a pair of knitted socks, one gold red, one yellow purple. William couldn't help questioning the old man's taste. Dobby's gift matched Dumbledore's, although its socks were identical. The aesthetic, well, let's not mention it. And yours? William threw the little package at the bottom to Kabuta. The surprised Niffler quickly tore open the round packaging to reveal a shiny golden galleon. Chirp. This gift clearly hit home for it. After casting a wary glance at William, it quickly stuffed the golden galleon into its belly. All right, the signature is Harry Potter, are you that close? William said while opening the last package, also signed Harry Potter. Inside was a pen that looked very expensive. Now to think of a return gift. William stood up, scratching his head. Some who gave gifts he hadn't expected, and some who didn't plan for a return gift. Like Snape, even though he accepted William's shampoo. All right, there's still some other things today. William stretched and stood up, remembering his plan for the evening. The werewolf issue needed solving. Meanwhile, in the Gryffindor boys' dormitory, Harry, just woken by Hermione, also began opening his gifts. Hagrid's candy, so hard. Harry winced, rubbing his mouth in discomfort. Mrs. Weasley sent you clothes, and a cake, Hermione said, noticing the largest package Harry had just opened. Her tone was a bit melancholic as both of them glanced at the empty bed nearby. Ron was still in the infirmary, missing Christmas. Hey, what's this? Harry found a red package from the gift pile. No signature. He briefly examined it. Why not open it and see? I'll do just that. Harry unwrapped the package to find an old black notebook inside. Tom M. Riddle. The boy opened the first page, reading out the somewhat smudged name. The night fell along with the heavy snow. A man cloaked in black paced back and forth under a large tree at the entrance of Hogsmeade Village. The damp, bone-chilling cold made him rub his exposed hands repeatedly, and the string of words constantly escaping his mouth revealed his inner restlessness. The man's alert eyes scanned in all directions: 3 broomsticks, pub, Gladrag's Wizardwear, Madame Puddifoot Tea House. Every shop was lit, radiating warmth into the snowy, cold night. Honestly, he wanted to go to 3 broomsticks, for a mug of butter beer to warm himself, but the man was unsure when his guest would appear. He couldn't risk not showing up as agreed. That damned werewolf might bite off his head in one gulp. Falling into the hands of a werewolf and having your head bitten off might actually be a good thing. The man thought bitterly, his hand unconsciously touching his cheek, where dark blue, sinister patterns made his face look grim and terrifying beneath the cloak. In the past 2 months, he had traveled across half of Europe but failed to find a way to remove this mark. Dung. The voice of his curse master friend seemed to linger in his ear. Whom on earth did you provoke? Is it serious? Mundungus Frankie asked, a bit nervous. I can only say, if the person who marked you intends to kill you, the curse master paused, his tone somewhat odd, then you'd better hurry and get out through that door there. He pointed to the wooden door of the hut beside them. What do you mean? Cleaning up brains is a hassle. They get all sticky and clingy. You know, I'm not good at household magic. The friend's words didn't completely discourage Frankie. He continued visiting many places thereafter, but most responses he received were similar, telling him to get lost and not dirty their houses, which was considered polite. Only one naive young curse master dared to take a shot. For a moment, this gave Mundungus hope. Of course, had that amateur not been turned into cauldron ashes by a blue flame after 2.5 minutes, his hope might have lasted a bit longer. After that, the man lost hope completely. After a week's hesitation, he chose to keep the appointment on Christmas Day. It was no big deal, just bringing one werewolf to meet another pack of werewolves, a small matter. As for notifying the Ministry of Magic, hey, if those incompetent idiots were useful, that werewolf wouldn't have been roaming free for over a decade without being caught and sent to Azkaban. But, where the heck is that stupid wolf? He's not here yet. The man rubbed his frostbitten hands, the anxiety on his face becoming increasingly apparent, if only. Very punctual, Mr. Frankie. The next moment, a youthful voice sounded from behind him, and he instinctively turned his head to look. It was a figure about half a foot taller than himself, who didn't bother to conceal his face, from the appearance. Mundungus was sure beyond doubt, this was a young little wizard, not yet of age. But at this time of night, how could there be any little wizards wandering about in Hogsmeade? Greyback. The man asked uncertainly, his right hand concealed within the cloak, holding his magic wand and ready to flee at any moment. Mr. Fenrir isn't able to come out in the open, so he sent me with you. The boy shook his head and then showed the man the suitcase he held. Looking at the familiar suitcase, which had been enchanted with Capacious Extremis, Mundungus's eyes showed some understanding. It was apparent that the werewolf was now inside the suitcase. But his tension wasn't alleviated. Can he hear us now? Certainly not. William shook his head once more. He had initially planned to meet using the polyjuice potion, but the thought of needing a sip of 18th century British Royal Sewer concentrated extract every half hour made him abandon the idea. He could manage the explanation himself. Besides, he was wearing his face from 100 years ago. That's good then. I mean, Mundungus paused, frowning slightly while looking at William. Are you the little wizard bitten by Fenrir? There was a faint, detectable hint of sympathy in the man's eyes. See, he didn't even need to make up an excuse. William nodded accordingly, his smile disappearing from his face. Crap, I shouldn't have. Noticing he seemed to have touched a nerve with the boy, Mundungus became a bit flustered. Although he considered himself a scoundrel lingering among the lower rungs of the wizarding community, he wasn't entirely rotten like the Death Eaters. He took no pleasure in others' misfortunes. After a brief silence, not knowing what to say, the man raised his right hand, his magic wand positioned midair. Almost immediately, with a thunderous bang, a deep purple, double-decker bus came to a screeching halt in front of them. The doors opened, and a man in a purple uniform jumped out. Welcome to the night bus, an emergency transport for stranded wizards. Just stick out your wand hand, board the bus, and we can take you anywhere you want to go. My name's Stan Shunpike, and tonight I'm your conductor. He declared loudly into the night of Hogsmeade, without noticing the shorter figure by the door until he finished his entrance speech. Yo, isn't that dung? Long time no see, where have you been making money lately? Shut up, Stan. 2 tickets to Edinburgh. Mundungus clearly wasn't in a good mood. He pushed back the head Stan tried to reach toward him, covering the mark on his cheek with the cloak. 2 tickets. Stan looked around and finally noticed William, holding the suitcase. Are you trafficking an underage little wizard? After a short silence, Stan's face, dotted with a few pimples, showed a hint of questioning as he pressed his head against Mundungus's, whispering. Are you sick? Ahem, just a joke. Stan hurriedly took William's suitcase, enthusiastically leading the two onto the bus under Mundungus's worried gaze. 2 tickets to Edinburgh. 2 galleons, 13 sickles, how will you be paying? Can't you make it cheaper? Mundungus frowned painfully. He had thought about getting an illegal portkey, but that was even more expensive. Fair dealings, my friend. Fine. Mundungus grudgingly pulled out 1 sickle after another from his pocket, then glanced at William, who was following Stan to his bunk, and sighed, add a cup of hot chocolate for him. After handing a pile of loose coins to Stan, he added 2 more sickles. All right. Stan weighed the coins in his hand and sauntered toward the driver's cabin. Hot chocolate. William raised an eyebrow. Ah, you're welcome. The man grinned, revealing a set of yellow teeth. Thanks for watching.